Chapter 353. The Battle of the Marquis Manor was a battle of the past. Life and death didn't matter between swords. The clanging of swords and the rustling of the wind were shocking. A rarely seen sword battle was quietly taking place within the Marquis Manor. The manor's guards couldn't help turning their heads to look at the battle of swords. They couldn't move their eyes away. If it were any other day, they wouldn't even have the qualifications to get close to such a battle. Only today were they able to watch it up close. After an unknown amount of time, the moon was high in the sky. The clanging of swords finally ended. After the transformation, Xian Tian no longer hesitated. His limitless sword was as sharp as before. Ning Chen raised his sword. Before the burden on his shoulders fell, he didn't allow anyone to stop him. The sharpness of his sword pressed down on people's hearts. With a clang, the two swords met. A strand of hair fell from Xian Tian's ear. He sheathed his limitless sword and left. After this battle, he had no regrets. Ning Chen looked at the departing purple-white figure. His plain clothes tore apart. "He's different from before," said Luan Fengchen. "Yes." Ning Chen nodded. "He truly was different. Can you tell me what's going on with the moon in the sky?" Luan Fengchen raised his head to look at the blood-red moon in the sky. "It's a long story." Ning Chen told him everything that had happened recently. Meng Xuanji and Luan Fengchen had both come. It seemed that the other experts of the four extremities would also come to the Divine Prefecture to find the source. Hopefully, this wasn't a disaster. After hearing the whole story, Luan Fengchen couldn't hide his shock. Did such a terrifying monster really exist in this world? He had only heard of ancient sages at the peak of the three calamities being able to affect the heavens. As for existences beyond that level, it was hard to imagine. "Where's Meng Xuanji?" asked Luan Fengchen. "She's a bit injured. She's currently in seclusion healing." Ning Chen replied. Last time, there had been an accident. Bai Jiang had been injured but hadn't died. After all, Meng Xuanji hadn't reached the three calamities and didn't have the glorious battle armor like Marquis Triumphant Return. Last time, Xianji also had the same black aura, but it was much weaker than Bai Jiang's. It could be seen that the existence behind the Eternal Night sect was more powerful than before. The Eternal Night God cult still had Bai Jiang and Rong Lu, two supreme experts in the three disaster realms. They still couldn't gain the upper hand in a head-on confrontation. They had to think of a way to divide the two. There was no such thing as absolute loyalty in an alliance of interests. "Chaotic Wind Dust, I have something I need your help with," said Ning Chen seriously. "Go ahead," Chaotic Wind Dust replied. Ning Chen explained the plan in detail. Rong Lu came from the west and was unfamiliar with the situation in the Divine Land. Now that Luan Fengchen was the master of a saint land, it would be better for her to get in touch with Rong Lu. Luan Fengchen's eyes narrowed. Only the person in front of him could come up with such a plan. "Be careful. This Rong Lu is not easy to deal with," Ning Chen warned. "Rest assured." Luan Fengchen nodded. Even if he made a mistake and couldn't win, running away was more than enough. After midnight, Luan Fengchen also left. Ning Chen looked at the blood moon in the sky, unable to hide the worry in his eyes. Even though he had more helpers now, he still didn't have much confidence in facing this unknown enemy. In the study, Ning Chen pushed open the bookshelf and walked in. Compared to last time, Chu Li's expression had changed a lot. She was calmer and less murderous. "Jiming Marquis, how long do you plan on keeping me here?" asked Chu Li coldly. "I want to see the Eternal Night Hierarch." "Miss Chu Li, do you have any ideas?" Ning Chen didn't beat around the bush and got straight to the point. Chu Li frowned and raised her head to look at the young man in front of her. What was this Jiming Marquis planning? "Miss Chu Li, I don't have any ill intentions. However, if you insist on not cooperating, I can't guarantee that we can still talk calmly like we are now," said Ning Chen seriously. Hearing this, Chu Li's eyes flashed coldly. A moment later, she restrained herself. The person in front of her was the Jiming Marquis. He couldn't possibly have the slightest concern for the fairer sex. Angering him wouldn't do her any good. The hierarch has always been a loner. I can't do anything about it, said Chu Li as calmly as she could while suppressing her anger. That really is a pity. Ning Chen sighed regretfully and walked out. Miss, if you're about to die, do you think your hierarch will come and save you? His final words echoed through the secret room. Chu Li's expression became angry, but before she could say anything, the door to the secret room had already closed. 3 days later, a martial marquis decree regarding the execution of the Eternal Night martial crown spread throughout the world. Ning Chen had written it in such a flamboyant manner that he hadn't concealed it in the slightest. Within the Eternal Night God's sect, when Bai Jiang received this report, he couldn't suppress his anger. This was clearly a provocation. Be careful, warned Rong Lu, I know. Whether or not it's a trap, I still have to save you, said Bai Jiang. Ha! Rong Lu faintly laughed. His words were filled with mockery. I didn't expect the head of the martial crown to be someone who has tender feelings for the fairer sex. Rong Lu, please pay attention to your words. I'm not always in the mood to listen to your jokes, said Bai Jiang coldly. Naturally. Lord Martial Crown, please go ahead. Rong Lu's lips curled into an icy smile. He didn't say anything else. Within the Eternal Night God's sect's first palace, Luo Fei looked at the empty throne. After a long time, she turned and left. At the same time, 15 miles away from the Eternal Night God's sect, Wan Fengchen walked over and calmly stood there, waiting for Rong Lu to appear. A beautiful figure flew out and then disappeared a moment later. Wan Fengchen didn't pay attention to her. Her goal was only Rong Lu. As for the other troubles, Ning Chen would have to deal with them himself. Within the Jiming Marquis residence, after the execution order was sent out, it became the focus of everyone's attention. The Eternal Night Martial Crown was a half-step 3 disaster expert. This shocking news shook the entire divine continent. In this world, the only person who would dare to openly provoke the Eternal Night God's sect was the person in the Jiming Marquis residence. Within the Marquis residence, Ning Chen calmly waited in the courtyard. He released his aura without hiding it at all. He was waiting for the Eternal Night God's sect's hierarch to come. Of course, if he caught some other fish, he would be happy to see them. Although Chu Li was easily angered, he knew too little. The person he wanted to see the Eternal Night God's sect's hierarch the most. After playing dead for so long, he even fooled his own subordinates. There had to be some reason. Outside the imperial city, a pair of calm eyes quietly looked in the direction of the Jiming Marquis residence. Suddenly, a beautiful figure flew past. Finally, a trace of fluctuation flashed across the calm eyes. With a soft sigh, the figure of Qing Hong walked out from the darkness and chased after her. She's here. Under the moonlight, Ning Chen looked at the beautiful figure in the distance and narrowed his eyes. The bright moonlight carried a murderous aura. Her slender hand slapped down with anger, hatred, and regret. The powerful palm made the real moon in the sky lose its color. Scroll of the Moon, Moonfall. Chapter 354. The moon fell from the sky with the power to split open the sky. Guanghan fell, as if the sky was falling. Ning Chen turned his palm to block the attack. His whole body was shining with silver light. He rushed forward and his feet sank 3 inches into the ground. Broken stone slabs flew in the courtyard. Sword Bodhi walked out. Buddha energy spread out and stabilized the shaking ground. Luo Fei's face was full of anger. This was the first time she used her full strength since she came out of seclusion. Ning Chen condensed his fingers into a sword and fought the furious Eternal Night Sect girl. Between the sword moves, 70% of it was attacking and 30% of it was defending. The brilliance of the moon swayed in the night sky. Luo Fei descended like the goddess of Guanghan. Between the moves, killing intent was revealed. She was no longer as calm as before. The battle of the Heavenly Book martial arts had reached a climax in the Marquis mansion. Luo Fei, who was at the peak of the four tribulations, was a person with great perseverance. After stepping into the innate realm, she abolished her cultivation and recultivated the moon scroll. Her foundation was extraordinary. Facing the knowing destiny state with 3 scrolls, she did not show the slightest fear. The sword and palm collided. In close combat, there was even more danger. Every move was like the road to the underworld. Luo Fei, are you the only one who came? Ning Qin stepped on the water. His body was like a phantom. His sword moved so fast that it was difficult to distinguish. I am enough. Luo Fei shouted coldly. The moonlight around her dispersed. In the moon, the real and the fake appeared. Her slender hand was threatening to kill. Ning Chen met the attack head-on. His eyes narrowed. The Heavenly Book indeed had its own mysteries. In the past, Luo Fei rarely fought. Even if she did, she never used her full strength. Today, he saw that she really lived up to her name. The battle for the heavenly tomes was incomparably magnificent. Under the moonlight, the goddess of Guanghan's robes fluttered in the wind. Her moves were as graceful as a phoenix's dance. She was so powerful that it was shocking. The Eternal Night Sect's daughter, who had once caused Zhong Qianqiu to feel apprehensive, displayed a shocking martial art. She was like a banished immortal, and the moonlight illuminated the 9 heavens. Ning Qin used his finger as a sword. He pointed, slashed, swept, and shook. He did not dare to be careless. The pressing killing intent overflowed. The goddess of Guanghan was suppressing the knowing destiny state. The battle was in a stalemate. Excuse me. Seeing Luofei's amazing strength, Ning Qin took half a step back. His expression hardened and he clenched his hand. Not too far away, a long mahogany box opened and a blue sparrow flew out. A cold sword light shined in the moonlight, threatening the mind. With the sword in his hand, knowing Ming's aura changed abruptly. His murderous aura surged, completely different from before. When the sword came out of overturning snow, the world turned solemn. The surging splendor of the frost brought about a boundless chill. Stop! At this moment, a calm voice sounded in the courtyard. A green-red figure appeared out of nowhere and blocked the murderous sword with his saber. You're finally willing to show yourself. Ning Chen waved his hand, and the azure sparrow returned to its sheath. Jiming Marquis, I can't hide anything from you. Li Luo sighed softly, and then he glanced at the nearby Bodhi sword and said, Grandmaster, I never expected that we would meet again so soon. Ba. This poor monk greets you, said Jian Bodhi with a smile. Grandmaster is too polite. Li Luo smiled. Father. Looking at the strange yet familiar back in front of her, Luofei's eyes flashed with disbelief. Silly daughter. Li Luo turned back and gently said. Jiming Marquis was the only person in the world who knew he wasn't dead. Before he appeared, Chu Li would be fine. He didn't know if he should be gratified or helpless to have such a sentimental daughter. Ruoxi, invite Miss Luofei in for tea. Ning Chen looked at Ruoxi behind Jian Bodhi and ordered. Yes. Ruoxi walked out and came to Luofei's side. Miss Luofei, please. Luofei glanced at the 2 people in front of her, unable to understand what was going on. Go, I have something to discuss with Jiming Marquis. Li Luo said. Luofei left with a puzzled Ruoxi. Jian Bodhi also returned to his room to rest after completing his task. In the courtyard, there were only 2 people left. The atmosphere was stagnant and indescribably heavy. The tea is ready, please. Ning Chen calmly said first. Deference is no substitute for obedience. Li Luo faintly smiled and followed. In the study, under the slightly dim candlelight, 2 faces were reflected. The tea was boiling and steam rose. Sect leader, please. Ning Chen personally poured a cup of tea and pushed it in front of the former. Li Luo took a sip of the tea with a faint smile on his face. Jiming Marquis' wisdom is extraordinary, but your tea brewing skills are really ordinary. Fighting too many battles, these hands only know how to use the sword. Ning Chen said with a hidden meaning. The Grand Xia being able to hold on to this day is indeed beyond my expectations. Jiming Marquis' ability is amazing. Li Luo didn't hesitate to praise. Originally, when he came to the Grand Xia, he couldn't get past the Northern Meng royal court. He didn't expect the final result to be beyond his expectations. Fan Lingyue's life was consumed little by little, several months earlier than expected. As for the chaos of the Four Poles later, except for the strength of the Master of the Four Poles, nothing else was worth mentioning. Sect leader overpraises me. I have kept your secret for so long, shouldn't you give me an explanation? The tea in the cup was upside down like small needles. Ning Chen calmly said as he felt the warmth from the tea. It's a long story. Since Chu Li was captured, Jiming Marquis must have already found out the name of Yama. Li Luo said indifferently. 7 absolute heavens, the god that the Eternal Night sect believes in. Ning Chen replied. Does Jiming Marquis believe that there are gods in the world? Li Luo asked. There shouldn't be. Ning Chen's hand holding the teacup paused for a moment before he replied. There shouldn't be, but many things in the world that shouldn't be can really exist. Li Luo said. With a crack, the teacup shattered. Ning Chen looked at the blood dripping from his hand, a cold light flashed in his eyes. The separation of the 5 regions was also his doing. Yes, and no. Li Luo sighed and continued, 30,000 years ago, he had already descended once and completely wiped out the 5 regions, leaving only a few races to continue. The separation of the 5 regions was because they couldn't bear his might. The divine continent was accidentally separated from the other 4 regions. Strictly speaking, it wasn't his wish, it was just an accident. Sounds like nonsense to me. Ning Chen said coldly. There were gods in the world. Was there anything more ridiculous than this? You've personally experienced how terrifying he is. Whether it's true or not, I don't need to explain, Li Luo replied. Ning Chen pondered for a moment, then raised his head and said, Sect Master doesn't want to be the master of the divine continent? Ha! Li Luo smiled and said, if I want to do it, I'll do it myself. There's no need for others to interfere. Ning Chen stared at the person in front of him. After a long time, he slowly said, where is Xia Zi's lost soul? The central spirit region, the border between the divine continent and his world. It's currently being held back by the Yenyun divine spear to ensure that the 2 worlds don't completely separate. Is this also the reason why you can't take out the Yenyun divine spear? Ning Chen frowned. Yes. Li Luo nodded and explained, although Yama can't descend on the divine continent, he can send a portion of his power to the central spirit region. At the very least, he's close to the peak of the 3 disasters. With my strength alone, I can't take it out. Ning Chen narrowed his eyes and asked, as long as I take out the divine spear, he won't be able to descend? In theory, that's the case. Once the divine spear is taken out, the 2 worlds will be separated. However, this is only my guess, Li Luo said seriously. Sect Master should have more opportunities on the surface. Why are you pretending to be dead and hiding in the shadows? Ning Chen asked his last question. Monitoring Bianjiang. Li Luo said calmly, the 3 palace halls of Eternal Night have different missions. Martial Monarch is in charge of the frontline battle, Zhong Qianqiu is mainly in charge of handling the matter of the Nether King's descent, and my mission is to borrow the strength of the Nether King and the divine sect Xiantian experts to hold the 2 realms together. The 3 palace masters don't interfere with each other. However, in recent years, the Central Spirit region has gradually stabilized, and with martial monarch's death, the divine sect's peak battle strength is insufficient, so my mission has changed accordingly. As for Bian Jiang, coming out of seclusion at this time, he must have accepted Zhong Qianqiu's unfinished mission under the orders of the Nether King. Ning Chen came to a sudden realization. No wonder the three great shrines of Evernight had emerged at such different times. Outside the study, the night gradually deepened. The reflection of the two people's conversation was reflected on the window. It was unknown how much time had passed. At daybreak, Ning Chen walked out of the study. Half a day later, the news of the Evernight sect's daughter being captured spread once more, shocking the world. Ever since the war between the Grand Xia and the Evernight Church, the situation hadn't been optimistic. Now that two of the Evernight Church's most important figures had been captured, it was truly shocking. Ning Chen couldn't completely believe the Evernight sect master's words. The Evernight sect master was also clear on this point. If they wanted to continue cooperating, they had to show their sincerity. Luofei staying in the Marquis' manor was the Evernight sect master's greatest sincerity. Of course, the premise was that Luofei and Chu Li wouldn't be in any danger. The two reached an agreement. The Evernight sect master would continue to appear as Li Luo to secretly monitor Bian Jiang and find a way to stop the Yama's descent. Ning Chen was responsible for continuing to pressure Bian Jiang, making him reveal as much as possible. As for retrieving Xia Zi's soul and the Misty Cloud spear, that was too difficult. With his current strength, it was impossible. He had to think of another way. 3 days later, the autumn wind was bleak. The carriage carrying the prisoners was heading towards the West Meridian gate outside the palace. The accompanying soldiers were on standby. Heaven's Reach realm martial artists stood on both sides of the carriage. It was an extraordinary formation. One could see how important the person escorting the prisoners was. Evernight Wu Guan, a top expert half a step away from the Three Disasters realm. He was an existence that could make the world tremble with a stomp of his foot. But today, he was reduced to a prisoner and was to be beheaded at the Meridian Gate. As they approached the Meridian Gate, suddenly, a powerful aura descended from the sky. Black waves of qi covered the sky and startled the people in the city. His black robe fluttered as he stood in the void. Chapter 355. Sword Bodhi and Rong Lu, the old rivals who had lasted for 100 years, met again. The Buddha and Rong Lu were locked in battle. In front of the prisoner carriage, Zhi Ming came out and blocked with his sword, not allowing Bai Jiang to get close. "You can leave now," Ning Chen said. "Yes." The Heaven's Reach martial artists and soldiers received the order and quickly retreated from the battle. Bai Jiang was afraid of Zhi Ming's sword and Chu Li, so he didn't dare to act recklessly. "Bai Jiang, how about we make a deal?" Ning Chen said calmly. "What deal?" Bai Jiang's eyes flickered coldly. "If Rong Lu dies, I will let her go," Ning Chen said coldly. Bai Jiang's face darkened. Did he think he was a fool to drive a wedge between them? "Even if I kill you, I can still take her away." Before he finished speaking, a black light flashed and Bai Jiang attacked. Suddenly, a blade appeared in front of him, blocking his way. "You again." Seeing the red figure in front of him, Bai Jiang couldn't suppress his anger. "Who was this person?" "I just happened to pass by," Li Luo said with a smile. "Now, how confident do you think you are in rescuing him?" Ning Chen asked coldly. Bai Jiang's face changed several times. He transmitted his voice to Rong Lu, who was fighting. "Their target is you, be careful." "Passerby, can you help me kill the man in red?" Ning Chen walked to the prisoner carriage, put his sword in front of Chu Li's throat, and said calmly. "That's what I was thinking." Li Luo chuckled, his figure rushed into the battle of the Buddha Rong Lu, waving his blade to kill. With the two besieging, the situation of Rong Lu was immediately unfavorable. "Bai Jiang, What are you hesitating for? Rong Lu was furious and shouted. The cold light of the blue sparrow was in front of Chu Li's throat. Bai Zhang's face was livid, and he said in a deep voice, Jiming Marquis, I have seen your despicable shamelessness today. Oh, thanks for the compliment. How about this, I will take a step back. You leave the imperial city now, and I swear in the name of Jiming Marquis, I will let Chu Li live after half an hour. At this point, Ning Chen changed the topic and said coldly, of course, if you don't agree, you can wait to collect Chu Li's corpse. In the current situation, you don't have any chance to save him. Bian Zhang's expression kept changing. He glanced at Rong Lu and hesitated for a moment before transmitting, Rong Lu, hold on for an hour. I'll be back soon. After that, Bian Zhang looked back at the young man in front of him and said coldly, Jiming Marquis, remember your oath. You know the price of breaking an oath. I know that better than you, Ning Chen said indifferently. Bai Zhang snorted coldly. The black qi dispersed and disappeared. With the departure of their allies, the situation at Rong Lu became even more disadvantageous. Sabers and swords trapped the Rong Lu. The battle between the three strongest experts of the current era caused the buildings to collapse. It made one feel as if the end of the world had arrived. There was no one around, only the whistling sound of blades and swords could be heard. Rong Lu knew that he had fallen into a trap and wanted to retreat quickly. The green sparrow flew past, knowing its destiny to join the battle, blocking the path ahead. An hour couldn't be considered long. This moment had become the boundary between life and death. If he could break through, he would escape with his life. If he couldn't, he would return to the Yellow Springs. Rong Lu activated his blood origin and thousands of blood tribulations surged like a tide. Blood light surged and heaven and earth suffered a calamity. Blood calamity collapses the world. A terrifying aura exploded out. A blood-colored world spread, spreading in all directions. Blood flowed out of his wounds. The wounds caused by the sabers and swords rapidly healed. The Rong race's special cultivation technique was fully displayed. You really can take a beating. Li Luo smiled. While attacking from all sides, he pressed a palm against Rong Lu's chest. With a bang, blood fell like rain. You can't kill me. Rong Lu coughed out a mouthful of blood. He abandoned his saber and condensed his energy. Boundless blood qi surged as he fought against the three of them. Another special cultivation technique. When did it become so worthless? Ning Chen snorted coldly. His sword momentum changed as he changed his target and attacked Rong Lu's Dantian Qi Si. Ha, the stronger you are, the more you value your life. You have to train in some life-saving techniques. Li Luo smiled. Did I come too late? Just at this moment, a rainbow saber appeared. Red hair danced in the wind, dazzling to the eye. You're not late. Just in time, replied Ning Chen. With Luan Fengchen joining the battle, the balance of the battle was tipped even further. 2 sabers and 2 swords trapped the Rong race's king. The carefully calculated time limit and the strength of each side had pushed Fan Zhang's bottom line as far as he could accept. Although an hour seemed short, it was harder than ascending to the heavens. Rong Lu, you've been abandoned by your trusted ally. How do you feel? Asked Ning Chen as his sword brushed past Rong Lu's right rib. Jiming Marquis, your plan to sow discord is so childish it's laughable, mocked Rong Lu. Sow discord? You're thinking too much. Do you think it's necessary for someone who's about to die? Asked Ning Chen calmly. You underestimate Rong Lu too much. Roared Rong Lu, enduring his heavy injuries. He pushed aside the sabers and swords in front of him. You want to leave? Wishful thinking. After the sabers and swords came an even sharper one. There was no pause. The battle of the Rong race had entered its most critical moment. The azure sparrow and the rainbow saber exchanged glances. Suddenly, the rainbow saber turned and stabbed into Jiming's chest. The sudden change shocked everyone. Rong Lu took the chance to push back Bodhi and Li Luo. Jiming Marquis, you've been betrayed by your most trusted ally. How do you feel? Jiming coughed up blood, dyeing his clothes red. He didn't even have time to say anything before he was drowned in blood. Are you satisfied with my sincerity? Asked Luan Fengchen calmly as he glanced at Rong Lu. Let's go. Rong Lu didn't answer. He wrapped the two of them in his blood yuan and quickly left. The desolate street was riddled with holes after the battle. Jian Bodhi walked to Jiming and sent his qi into Jiming's body. An hour passed in the blink of an eye. In the distance, a black aura was approaching again. Li Luo's expression hardened as he stood in front of the two. This shocking scene caused Bai Jiang's eyes to narrow. This unexpected ending was truly shocking. Let him go. Ning Chen coughed up another mouthful of blood. He had no choice but to let him go. Bai Jiang sneered and shattered the prison carriage with a single palm. He then left with the unconscious Chu Li. In the backyard of the Jiming Marquis residence, Madame Luo looked at the Jiming Marquis being brought back. Her beautiful face flashed with surprise. It was hard to believe that such a lineup would be injured to this extent. News of the Jiming Marquis being heavily injured spread throughout the world. 5 days after the news spread, the Jiming Marquis residents quickly came out to refute the rumors. However, the Jiming Marquis, who was the key to dispelling the rumors, had yet to appear. The various actions of the Marquis residents seemed weak and powerless at this moment, as if they were trying to hide something. In the third divine palace of Evernight, Bai Jiang sat on the throne, listening to the reports of the people below. What about the Weiyang Palace? Has there been any movement? Asked Bai Jiang. No, that Empress Dowager still hasn't left the Weiyang Palace, said the figure below respectfully. Bai Jiang sneered. This acting was too much. Given the relationship between the Weiyang Palace and the Jiming Marquis, how could she not visit him? The more they tried to hide it, the more it meant that the Jiming Marquis was truly doomed this time. If the Jiming Marquis died, then the alliance between the Grand Xia, Northern Meng, and the barbarian dynasty would be a joke. Rong Lu and Luan Fengchen appeared outside Peerless City. The former headquarters of the four extreme armies had been almost completely destroyed due to the war. They hadn't had time to rebuild it. How about it? Join hands with me. Compared to that treacherous Bai Jiang, it should be easy to choose, said Luan Fengchen. Why? Rong Lu turned his head and narrowed his eyes. To betray a companion so decisively, that saber strike had truly surprised him. Bai Jiang couldn't be trusted, and the person in front of him couldn't be that strong. Before power and benefits, our past alliance isn't worth mentioning. Between us, there's no conflict of interest. It's the best choice, said Luan Fengchen calmly. Rong Lu carefully weighed the pros and cons. The four extreme realms were indeed a good choice to join hands with. Unlike Bai Jiang, this person might have a large amount of Xiantian resources, but due to his cultivation base, he couldn't completely intimidate him. If they joined hands, even if this person betrayed him in the future, he was confident he could eliminate him. Seeing Rong Lu waver, Luan Fengchen continued, from what I see, your cultivation technique has extremely high requirements for blood yuan. The Phoenix Perch Mountain of the four extreme realms has already been confirmed to contain 2 phoenixes. If you help me unify the four extreme realms, I'll definitely find a way to help you trap those 2 phoenixes in the future. Rong Lu's eyes shone brightly, and he no longer hesitated. Deal. Luan Fengchen smiled. Let's go. With that, the two of them flew toward Ascension Valley. Rong Lu had finally left for the time being. At the same time, within the Eternal Night God sect, Chu Li was still unconscious. Bai Jiang frowned, unable to find the reason. Without a doubt, the Jiming Marquis had done something to Chu Li's body. Bai Jiang walked over from the dark abyss. Behind the opened coffins, the images of gods and demons fell silent. He waited for a long time, but there was no response. Since there was no response, Bai Jiang sighed and left first. Half a day later, outside the Eternal Night God's sect, a black aura flew out and headed southeast. After Bai Jiang left, the green-red figure, who had been waiting for a long time, followed. They were very far away and were very cautious. In the southeast of the Great Xia, outside Donghua City, the black aura gathered. Looking at the battlefield after the battle between the Great Xia and the Meniang Kingdom, he drew a strange seal with his hands. The blood of the eight-headed snake flew up from the dust. Bai Jiang used the blood as a guide to find the source of the ferocious beasts. The Eternal Night God scripture was affected by the Chaos Scroll. Originally, it would have taken some time to find the hiding place of these ferocious beasts. He didn't expect the Meniang Kingdom to find them first. The Hydra was the most cunning of all the ferocious beasts. It separated its life source from its main body. Although its power was weakened, as long as its life source wasn't destroyed, even if something happened to its main body, there was still hope for it to be revived. Found it. The origin tracing technique took effect. Bai Jiang looked in the direction of Meniang country in the distance and sped off. Chapter 356. In the homeland of Western Buddhism, the moon shone brightly. Wave after wave of pursuits had been going on for several days. Many Buddhist cultivators, the Owl clan, the Yen clan, the Zhao clan, and even the Rong clan surrounded them again, joining forces to fight against the cultivators from the alien realm. Hand over the scroll of nothingness and I'll spare your life. A red-robed Buddha walked out from among the Buddhist cultivators. He looked coldly at the green-robed figure in the middle and said coldly, "Why are you still talking to him? Let's kill him first." A cold-looking young man from the Owl clan walked out and said. Prince Yen ignored him. He looked at the girl behind him and asked calmly, "Ah man, are you afraid?" "No." Ah man shook her head. Then, she looked at the red-robed Buddha in front of her and whispered unhappily, "Bald donkey." "Ha!" Prince Yen chuckled. He waved his hand and the sword rack flew in front of him. He held the green and red swords with both hands and pulled them out. He replied, "Don't learn bad things from that guy." Everyone present was at least a fourth tribulation Khanate cultivator. How could they not hear the curse? Murderous intent flashed in the red-robed Buddha's eyes. He swung his Buddhist commandment blade, bypassing Prince Yen and rushing towards Ah Man Clang. The sound of swords and sabers colliding rang out. The green sword blocked the Buddhist commandment blade and changed its momentum, pushing the red-robed Buddha away. "If anyone dares to touch her again, I won't let them live," Prince Yen said coldly. "Arrogant." The young man from the Owl clan snorted coldly. His figure flashed like an eagle, and his 3 fingers clawed at Ah Man. Prince Yan's eyes finally flashed with murderous intent. The aura of the 2 swords changed abruptly. His black hair fell apart and danced in the wind. An unprecedented pressure spread out. The legend of the Great Xia dynasty showed his murderous body for the first time. He was no longer calm. His killing intent overflowed. The moment he swung his sword, his fingers flew and blood splattered. A peak 5th tribulation cultivator was killed in one move, shocking everyone present. Kill! The red-robed Buddha's expression darkened. He swung his blade and the unique aura of the 3 disasters rose, cutting through the night. The Shao clan, the Yen clan, and the Rong clan, the 3 top powerhouses, worked together at the same time. Their palms opened the 9 heavens, and their halberds fell to the yellow springs. The rest of the powerhouses also joined forces to kill the 2 people in front of them. The Buddhists, the 3 races, 4 of the 3 disasters and dozens of Khanate realm experts formed an extremely powerful lineup. Their auras merged together and sealed off the entire area. Qing Hong brandished her sword, sending out a wave of brilliant killing light. The 4 experts of the 3 disasters immediately felt a powerful pressure. The unstoppable sword light was like the sickle of the Grim Reaper under the moonlight. There was only death. Broken soldiers broke souls and blood splattered everywhere. The legend of Grand Xia showed his most terrifying side. His sword was merciless. The yellow springs opened the way and the netherworld welcomed the enemy. Fresh blood splattered on the sword, blooming like a waterfall. The legend of Grand Xia had revealed his killing intent. His black hair danced in the wind, and his sword aura was murderous. In an instant, another figure died under his sword. At that moment, a black ancient bow was drawn from the Zhao family's camp behind Prince Yan. Horrifying chi flowed in the air. Dark blue light gathered together and formed an extremely horrifying arrow. It tore through the air. The moment the arrow shot out, the space trembled. Qing Hong sensed it and the sword aura spread out. The legend of Xia leaned to the side and the arrow brushed past his shoulder. Strands of black hair fell to the ground. You are already dead. Prince Yan's eyes turned cold. He waved his hand and the sand sword and Zhiga spear flew out. The green and red swords left his hands and turned into shooting stars that shot into the sky. For swords move the world, heaven and earth fall together. It was a move that appeared for the first time in the mortal world. The four swords shook the four directions and fell down with a loud bang. Heaven and earth collapsed along with it. The collapsed void brought about a series of pitch-black ravines. Blood and broken limbs flew everywhere. After the terrifying strike, the nearest dozen inborn experts were all sent flying. In the Zhao family's camp, blood and bones splattered everywhere. The man with the bow spurted blood all over his body like rain. He fell powerlessly to the ground, blood gushing out from his mouth. The horrifying scene shocked everyone. The leaders of the three families landed on the ground and vomited blood. They barely managed to stabilize themselves. Looking at the miserable scene in front of them, they were shocked and couldn't believe it. The Zhao family will, the man in the purple robe with the bow lost his spirit. He didn't have time to finish his sentence. The Zhao family that dominated the four states finally tasted the most painful pain today. Retreat. Seeing that the situation was unfavorable, the red-robed Buddha moved his feet and led the Buddhist behind him out of the battle. The Rong family, Xiao family, and Yan family also didn't dare to continue fighting and quickly retreated. Clang! The green, red, sand, and Zhiga spear returned to their sheaths and landed on the sword rack. Prince Yan withdrew his killing intent and looked at the girl beside him. He said calmly, "Let's go. It's time to send the void scroll over." Okay. Man nodded obediently. She went forward and carried the sword rack on her back and left with the former. Jiming Marquis Manor. Under the moonlight, Bai Yi looked at the moon quietly. She couldn't help but miss it. Only after tasting the warmth and coldness of the world would one know how deep it was. Suddenly, she felt a sharp pain in her heart. It was as if 1,000 knives had been carved into her heart, one after another. In the homeland of Western Buddha, a man looked at the words on the void scroll in front of her. Her vital energy turned into a knife and carved into her heart stroke by stroke. It was the first time someone could use the heart-carving technique after 1,000 years. They were separated by 2 planes and the news was completely blocked. No method would work. Only through 2 people who were completely connected by blood could the contents of the void scroll be transmitted to the divine great land. In front of a man, Prince Yan stood with his back to her. He was silent. The pain in his heart wasn't something that ordinary people could endure. The persistence of these 2 juniors was heartbreaking. The words were carved into their hearts. The 2 people who were separated by 2 planes were enduring great pain. However, it was only at this moment that they could feel each other's existence. Drops of blood dripped from the corners of their mouths and dyed their clothes red. This was the sudden fate of the barbarian palace. From that moment on, the 2 were tightly bound together. They were once young girls who didn't understand the world. They were once young boys with weak wings. When they first met, their slightly childish words were indeed the best memories in the world. The moon traveled to the west. A blood-stained heavenly book was transmitted from the homeland of Western Buddha to the divine Great Land. After the last stroke, a man smiled and fainted. In the Jiming Marquis manner, Bai Yi's eyes dimmed. She walked into the study and closed the door. In Meniang country, in front of Mount Fupan where snow and cherry blossoms were falling, a dark aura descended. Looking at the snow-covered mountain pass, she turned into a stream of light and walked up. So it was here. He should have thought of it earlier. Mount Fupan, Meniang sacred mountain. Hydra was a god that Meniang country believed in. It wasn't surprising that they were hiding here. Qing Hong's figure appeared and quickly followed. In Mount Fupan, Bai Jiang walked down the mountain step by step. After the volcano stopped erupting, the dead mountain became Hydra's residence. Everywhere there was a bone-chilling aura. After walking for a long time, Bai Jiang stopped. Looking at the mountain rocks in front of him, he turned his palm and slammed it down. With a boom, the heaven and earth shook. Among the broken rocks, a strange black ball of light flew out. Before it could escape, it was caught by Bai Jiang and its spiritual consciousness was erased. Behind him, Li Luo frowned slightly. He didn't see what the ball of light was in Bai Jiang's hand. The three temple lords had different missions and had different information. Even though he was the eternal night hierarch, he couldn't easily interfere with the missions of the other two temple lords. The two left one after the other. In the Jiming Marquis manner, Qing Hong's figure walked out of the study. The same face appeared in two places at the same time. The next moment, she walked out of the manor. The spies of the Eternal Night cult who had been lurking outside the manor saw the figure walking out of the manor and immediately followed. However, they lost track of the former after less than 10 miles out of the imperial city. In the academy, Qing Hong's figure appeared with a different face. It was the Jiming Marquis who was rumored to be seriously injured and dying. "Teacher, I found the no scroll," Ning Chen said solemnly in the wooden house. Hearing this, the teacher who was sorting out the ancient books paused. He raised his head and said slowly, "Go find Dao Kuei. He will guide you in cultivation. I still have something to worry about." "I hope teacher can give me some advice," Ning Chen said. "What is it?" the teacher asked. "Zi's soul is still in the central spirit region. Is there any way to get it back?" Ning Chen asked. The teacher was silent for a moment and said, "If the hierarch of the Eternal Night cult can get his weapon back, his strength can barely reach the level of the third disaster. In the central spirit region, he may be able to exchange a few blows with the 7 Ju Tian whose strength is limited. If you want to save Xia Zi's soul, this is the only way." Ning Chen narrowed his eyes. The difficulty of this matter wasn't small. Although Li Luo knew the location of the Smoky Cloud Divine Spear, he still needed to pass through the Nether King's protection. Facing an expert who was close to the peak of the 3 disasters, he didn't have much confidence. The central spirit region was the border between the two worlds. Yama could not reach the Divine Land, and they could not reach the world where Yama was. The central spirit region was supported by the Smoke Cloud Divine Spear, so it could only bear a limited amount of power. Yama also did not dare to send too much power. However, even so, an enemy who was close to the great perfection of the 3 disasters was not easy to pass. Once you master the forbidden move of the life scroll, your body and foundation will improve rapidly in a short time. This is also the fastest way to improve your strength in a short time. However, this move can be cultivated but not used. Remember, the teacher reminded him seriously. "Yes, thank you for your advice." Ning Chen nodded and bowed respectfully before leaving. Half a day later, Qing Hong returned to the Marquis mansion. In the dead of night, Li Luo appeared out of nowhere in the courtyard. The two of them, one in the light and one in the dark, sat across from each other in the academy, exchanging information. "Sect Master, I have a question I've always wanted to ask. Is this the original appearance of your body? Asked Ning Chen. Of course. Li Luo took a sip of tea. Otherwise, how could I hide it from Pai Jiang? One person having two bodies. It really is inconceivable. Ning Chen sighed. Ha, it's just an incomplete copy that was passed down after the 5 regions were purged. It's long been incomplete. If you want to learn it, I can teach you. Li Luo smiled. Then thank you for your generosity, senior, said Ning Chen respectfully. Hey, don't call me senior. We're not that close. Furthermore, I can't teach you for free. You have to pay for it. Li Luo smiled. Ning Chen's lips curved. Whatever the Marquis mansion has that sect master likes, you can take. Chapter 357. Ah, besides a few girls in your mansion, you only have a single monk. What do you think you can pay? Li Luo smiled. What does religion master want? Ning Chen asked back. Heavenly tomes, Li Luo lightly said. Ning Chen narrowed his eyes. With religion master's cultivation, does it matter if you have a heavenly tomes or not? Just because I don't need it doesn't mean I don't want it. 1 for 1, no one will suffer a loss. Li Luo remained unmoved. Which volume does religion master want? Ning Chen put down the tea in his hand and asked. The life volume, Li Luo calmly said. Then forget it. Ning Chen shook his head and directly refused. When Junior obtained the life volume in the past, I promised someone that I wouldn't give it to anyone else. This Junior doesn't have the fortune to cultivate religion master's cultivation method. Li Luo frowned. He picked up the tea in his cup and silently tasted it. After a long time, he looked up and said, let's change the conditions. You will give 30% of the life volume's cultivation method to Luofei, as well as the heaven volume. Ning Chen forcibly resisted the urge to throw the teacup at the former's face. Religion master, you really know how to take advantage of a burning house. You might be in a hurry, but I'm not. This is the last condition. Do you want to change it or not? Li Luo smiled. Change it. Ning Chen squeezed out a word from between clenched teeth. Li Luo casually took out a tattered jade page and tossed it over. He chuckled. Here, take it. It seems religion master has already prepared it. Ning Chen received the jade page. From the moment we met, I discovered that you were always thinking about this cultivation method. Do you really think I don't know anything? Li Luo slowly said. Ah, the older the ginger, the spicier it is. Ning Chen chuckled and casually said, religion master gave me the cultivation method first. Aren't you afraid this junior will go back on his word? I can beat several of you by myself. What am I afraid of? Li Luo's words were filled with disdain. Ning Chen was speechless. The cyan jade page was mottled and ancient. It had long been damaged beyond repair. Fortunately, the words recorded on it could still be read. Ning Chen read it for a moment and frowned. Sect master, how many years have you spent cultivating this body? Ning Chen raised his head and clenched his teeth. Li Luo sipped the tea in his cup unhurriedly and replied, it's been over 100 years. Sigh, it's been too long, I can't remember. Ning Chen didn't know what to say. It seemed that he couldn't expect the clone to have much combat power in a short period of time. Let me remind you that if the clone dies, the main body will be heavily injured and might even die with it. So before the clone has a certain amount of ability to protect itself, you must be careful, Li Luo sternly reminded. Thank you for your reminder, Sect Master, Ning Chen replied. This time, Pai Jiang went to Fu Pan Mountain and took out something unknown. In all likelihood, it is related to the 7 absolute heavens. In the near future, Pai Jiang will likely make another move. I cannot stay here for long. If there is anything, just tell Luofei. She knows how to inform me. Li Luo said. Yes. Ning Chen nodded and said, the matter of the smoke cloud divine spear still needs some time. Once the battle forces are gathered, I will inform the sect master. Li Luo nodded and stood up to bid farewell. Take care. Be careful. Take care. Ning Chen sternly said. Li Luo turned and left. The door to the study opened and Qing Hang's figure scattered, disappearing in an instant. Not long after Li Luo left, there was a knock on the door outside the study. Come in, Ning Chen replied. Luofei pushed open the door and entered. She opened the still warm tea on the table and frowned. Father came. He just left, Ning Chen honestly said. I don't want to ask about your matters. I just want to tell you that the strength of the 7 absolute heavens is not something a human can compare with. If you want to deal with him, the only way is to stop him from descending. Do not try to fight him directly, Luofei solemnly said. Ning Chen sighed inwardly. He also didn't want to face such a monster. Unfortunately, he had no other choice. Luofei, thank you for exiling you, Ning Chen earnestly said. At that time, if Luofei had told him where Xianyu was, he wouldn't have been able to rescue her. He would always remember this kindness. Luofei nodded and turned to leave without saying anything else. Miss Luo, please wait. At this time, Ning Chen stood up and condensed energy with his fingers. A silver brilliance rose from his body and an extremely cold energy stirred up the ice and snow in the room. It was like winter had arrived, a beautiful sight to behold. I promised your father that I would transfer 30% of the Life Scrolls cultivation method to you. As his voice fell, wind and snow swirled, gathering around Luofei. In the next moment, her clothes flashed as true essence crossed Ning Chen's Qi Si and poured into her dantian. Luofei's heart shook. At this time, she didn't dare to be distracted. She revolved the Book of Moon, guiding the Life Scrolls cultivation method to rapidly spread out. A quarter hour later, outside the Marquis mansion, dark clouds covered the moon. A heavy pressure fell down, as if the heavens were falling. Ning Chen withdrew his hand. He looked at the dark clouds outside and said, Miss Luo, I wish you success. With the arrival of the 5th Xiantian tribulation, the entire imperial court was filled with this heavy pressure. Luofei took a step forward and quickly vanished from the room, rushing out of the imperial court. Within the study, Ning Chen waved his hand and closed the door. He looked at the jade tome in his hands, a dignified expression on his face. The cultivation method that he had lost could be restored. This avatar technique was indeed more important to him right now. With the cries of a phoenix, phoenix blood flew out. Layer after layer of blood-red light gathered together. The heavenly soul left the body and fused into the phoenix blood. Heaven, earth, and life, these 3 scrolls revolved together. True essence nourished the soul and the phoenix blood condensed into an avatar. In the end, humans were not gods, they could not create avatars out of thin air. As the avatar appeared, the aura of the main body rapidly weakened. True essence and blood vitality were rapidly consumed. Time passed day after day. For over 10 days, the Marquis mansion's study was tightly shut. No one dared to disturb him. Half a month later, Luofei walked out. She took 2 steps and vanished from sight. In the Qizhou mountain range, in the ancient land that stretched for tens of thousands of miles, Luofei appeared. Senior Dao Kuei, Ning Chen stopped and said. At this time, the earth shook and a giant crack slowly opened, swallowing Dao Kuei within. This was the second time they met. The exhaustion in Dao Kuei's eyes was even more obvious. But, there was a faint smile on his young face, as warm and gentle as ever. Senior. Ning Chen respectfully bowed. The more he learned, the more he was moved by Dao Kuei and his teacher's persistence. These 2 were truly selfless people. For the sake of the common people, they didn't want to suffer in the great calamity 1,000 years from now. They had waited for 1,000 years. Even the ancient sages could not compare to them. There's not much time left. Let's begin, said Jiang Wangji. Yes. Ning Chen sat down and began to circulate the life scroll. At the same time, the void scroll converged. One was life, the other was destruction. They complemented and supported each other, reinforcing and suppressing each other. Jiang Wangji waved his hand and a purple zither appeared. His fingers strummed it, and profound music began to ring out, entering Ning Chen's body. A fourth cyclone gradually appeared in Ning Chen's sea of qi. Borrowing the power of the profound music, it began to rapidly grow. You want to borrow the power of the 3 scrolls to use the life scroll's forbidden technique? Just as the 4 scrolls reached a balance, the auras of the heaven, earth, and void scrolls rapidly poured into the life scroll. The balance between life and destruction was instantly broken. Jiang Wangji sensed this and his expression was grave. Yes. Ning Chen nodded. I can help you, but you must remember that this technique can be cultivated but not used. After saying this, Jiang Wangji plucked the zither strings with his right hand. 2 ancient swords, one black and one white, flew out from the zither's body. The Taoist formation was activated, and yin and yang transformed into taiji. The swords formed a formation around the former and rotated continuously. At the same time, on the western front of Great Xia, the allied army of the 3 dynasties had gathered and launched a fierce counterattack against the Eternal Night cult. For a time, the Eternal Night army was forced to retreat again and again. With Rong Lu gone and Chu Li unconscious, the Eternal Night cult only had Bai Jiang left. Even with fierce generals like Residual Wind and Hua Zhuang, it was still difficult to face the allied army of the 3 dynasties. On Great Xia's side, after Marquis Jiming's accident, the forces that had fought against the master of the 4 extreme realms were all hidden and did not participate in this war. In the Marquis's mansion, a Marquis in red robes was always in the study. Although his face was the same as Marquis Jiming's, his aura was many times weaker. The one-person double transformation technique was indeed magical. However, its weakness was also very obvious. The clone only had the appearance, and its battle strength was almost negligible. After all, not everyone could be like Li Luo, tempering his avatar for 100 years and still fighting fiercely. After all, living for a long time had its benefits. Marquis, the tea is cold. Do you want another cup? Ruoshi walked over and asked softly. No need. Ning Chen picked up the teacup. The originally cold tea immediately steamed up. Has Luofei not returned yet? Ning Chen asked. No. Ruoshi shook her head. Ning Chen frowned. After the 5th tribulation, there would be 3 disasters. However, the 3 disasters were different from the 5 tribulations. It was hard to predict when they would descend. If the 3 disasters followed after the 5th tribulation, Luofei would be in trouble. Do you need me to go take a look? Meng Xuanji walked over and asked calmly. Thank you, but be careful. Ning Chen urged. Your safety. Meng Xuanji was a bit worried. It's fine. I don't doubt the people I use. Ning Chen replied. Meng Xuanji nodded and didn't say anything else. Since he said so, she could only trust his judgment. After Meng Xuanji left, Ning Chen leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. His face was full of exhaustion. What other details had he not thought of? What were the conditions for the 7 extremes to descend? Ghost origin, underworld origin, Tao origin, and 7 extremes physiques. The origins of these special physiques had already been taken away by the Eternal Night sect. Why would Bai Jiang go to Manyang country's Mount Fupan? The study quieted down without a trace of sound. Ruoshi's eyes flashed with a trace of unbearable pain. She stepped forward and gently massaged Ning Chen's temples. Underworld origin, Tao origin, ghost origin, Ning Chen's mind flashed over and over again. After an unknown amount of time, he suddenly stood up. Origin. At this moment, in the void temple of the Eternal Night God sect, Bai Jiang opened the Eternal Night scripture floating in the void. His eyes suddenly lit up. Found it. Chapter 358. The Eternal Night Divine Scripture floating in the air emitted a strange light. On the Divine Scripture, a picture of mountains and rivers appeared. The images reflected in it were clearly visible. So it was hiding here. Bai Jiang's eyes flashed coldly. After searching for so long, he had finally found it. Northern Meng's royal court, on the northwestern border of a strange mountain, a black aura gathered. Bai Jiang walked out, and a powerful pressure descended. All the birds and beasts on the mountain cried out in fear. A blurry, translucent figure appeared in the huge river. It let out ear-piercing shrieks. A water demon? Bai Jiang stopped, frowning slightly. An ordinary river was actually able to give birth to such a monster. It wasn't simple. The water demon had already taken human form. It looked like a woman, but its facial features were still a bit blurry. The water demon, which had just gained sentience, could clearly sense how terrifying the person in front of it was. Its shrieks were filled with terror. They were no longer on the same level. It felt like it could destroy anything. Bai Jiang stepped into the river, and the entire river collapsed. The water demon's newly formed body immediately collapsed without any resistance. It was like a god crushing an ant, cruel and simple. Bai Jiang's steps suppressed all life. No more insects or beasts dared to block his path. A moment later, mist gathered, blocking his vision. Bai Jiang sneered. It seemed it had also awakened. Dark light surged within the fog. No barrier could block it. The thick fog was instantly dispelled. Wah, wah. At this moment, a young baby's cry rang out from the depths of a strange mountain. It was heart-wrenching. The earth rumbled, and mountain rocks were sent flying. A petrified body that was like a mountain and river revived. 8 huge heads appeared, and they had the faces of infants. 4 were male and 4 were female. It was extremely terrifying. The 9 neonate had awakened. Other than the one that had died in the heavenly flame, the other 8 had all awakened. On a strange mountain, the 9 neonate shrieked. The 4 female babies opened their mouths and spat out scarlet flames at the black-robed figure in front of them. A mere beast dares to provoke me? Bai Jiang snorted and waved his hand. The black aura gathered in front of him, blocking the scarlet flames. The 9 neonate was horrified. The 4 male babies opened their mouths at the same time. Black water poured out, bringing with it a terrifying poison. Heaven's tears. Bai Jiang clenched his fist, and an ancient sword appeared in his hand. Green blood flowed about, strange and unordinary. When the sword appeared, the wind and clouds changed. It parted the mystic water and chopped off the heads of the 3 boys. With 3 loud bangs, the heads fell to the ground, causing dust and sand to fill the sky. The gushing blood dyed the heavenly tears of jade blood red. Blood rain fell from the sky, poignant and beautiful. Absolute suppression. There was no doubt about it. Jiu Ying, who had hidden for tens of thousands of years, could not escape the fate of being slaughtered in the end. The cries of an infant resounded through Alienation Mountain. It was so sorrowful, but it was completely useless. The bloody tears of heaven was sharp and merciless. It drew a cold, murderous light as heads fell one after another. In front of the powerful head of the martial crown, the 9-headed neonate that had lived for tens of thousands of years did not have much ability to resist. It walked step by step into the road to the underworld. The strength of humans would forever be the nightmare of other living beings. Even if other living beings cultivated bitterly for thousands or even tens of thousands of years, they would still be unable to achieve the same level of strength as humans. Blood flowed out of the devastated Alienation Mountain, dyeing half of the mountain red. The nine-headed neonate fell into a pool of blood, no longer making a sound. Bai Jiang raised his hand. A black and red ball of light flew out of the nine-headed neonate and slowly fell. Not far away, Li Luo appeared. Seeing this scene, his eyes narrowed. Without hesitation, he rushed forward and grabbed the falling ball of light. Bai Jiang's eyes turned cold. His feet moved and blocked in front of him. Heaven's tears of heaven slashed down, filling the sky with green blood light. Li Luo twisted his body and avoided the sword light. He wanted to grab the ball of light again, but it was already too late. Do you really think I am not prepared at all? Bai Jiang waved his hand and put away the origin of the nine-headed neonate. He looked at the person in front of him and said coldly. Such an unfamiliar expert had suddenly appeared in the world, and he was even related to the Jiming Marquis. How could he not be on guard? Since it is like this, then let me see how much you have improved. As soon as he finished speaking, Li Luo's body moved, his blade unsheathed. The beauty of his blade shocked the heavens and earth. It was a completely unfamiliar martial art. His blade was slow, but it was fast, causing people's minds to be in chaos. Bai Jiang turned over his palm to block the blade. With a king sound, the black aura scattered in all directions. Bai Jiang's crimson blood tears streaked across the sky, dazzling the eyes with green light. Li Luo was as immovable as a mountain. His sword finger shook the heavens, and with a bang, a huge crack appeared between the two of them. The two experts who were the closest to the third innate calamity in the world met once more at northern Meng's Shunli Mountain. Saber light and sword light constantly clashed. Life and death only existed in an instant. Estrangement Mountain, which was already riddled with holes, suffered another calamity. Large chunks of rock collapsed and fell down. The terror of the cultivators on the peak was on full display at this moment. At the same time, to the east of the Grand Xia, thousands of miles of wilderness, Madame Luofei had just crossed her fifth tribulation and was now facing the greatest tribulation of her life. Not long after the fifth tribulation passed, the great tribulation of the three disasters arrived. The eternal night sect girl was gradually running out of strength, and was now surrounded by perils. As the ghost palanquin arrived, a red-clothed knowing destiny stepped out. As he looked at Luofei in the great tribulation, he frowned. What do we do? Meng Xuanji asked with a dignified expression. Heavenly tribulation couldn't be interfered with, otherwise the one who did would attract a heavenly tribulation of the same level or even higher. She only knew that the man beside her had once blocked heavenly tribulation, but in this situation, Ningchen frowned, a light constantly jumping in his eyes. With his current strength, it was impossible for him to block the great tribulation of the three disasters. Let's go back. Ningchen calmly said. He turned and entered the palanquin. The ghost palanquin sped away, rushing towards the Marquis mansion. Within the Marquis mansion, within a stone room, Ningchen walked over. He looked at the figure trapped beneath the Solomon sword and said, something has happened to Luofei. In Milky Flower Plains, only you can save her. Beneath the Buddhist sword, the demonic cultivator opened his eyes. He coldly said, you should know what will happen to you if you release me. Ningchen didn't answer. He glanced at Bodhi behind him and calmly said, Senior, I'll have to trouble you. Have you thought this through? Bodhi sternly asked. Ningchen nodded. Right now, no accidents could happen to his alliance with the Eternal Night Church Master. He had promised Luofei's safety, so he had to keep his word. Bodhi sighed and didn't say anything else. He twisted his fingers and the Solomon sword returned to its scabbard. The stone room's seal dissipated. The demonic cultivator moved, his demonic might shaking the heavens. Bodhi took a step forward and struck out with a palm, blocking the demonic cultivator's palm. This palm can be considered a greeting. Cherish your last moments, my good friend. The cold voice didn't contain the slightest emotion. The demonic cultivator passed by. Calling him a good friend was even more ironic. The demonic cultivator waved his hand and the demonic sword suppressed beneath the stone room flew out. In the next moment, the demonic chi scattered and the demonic cultivator vanished from sight. I hope you won't regret today's decision in the future. Bodhi looked at the departing demonic cultivator with a dignified expression. Even in the homeland of Western Buddhism, this person was an absolute chosen of heaven. If such a person were to fall into the demonic path, the calamity he would bring about would be unimaginable. East of the Grand Xia, above the milky flower plains, the demonic chi condensed. His robes fluttered in the wind as he walked step by step into the three calamities. Within the tribulation sea, Luofei vomited a mouthful of blood and staggered. She had already reached her limit. It's you. When Luofei saw the figure walking over, her consciousness relaxed and she directly fainted. The demonic cultivator caught her falling figure. With a slash of his sword, he cut apart the karmic flames surging towards him and walked out. The heavens sensed this and their fury soared. The formless karmic flames transformed into tangible black flames that could burn the heavens and boil the seas. Demonic sword, bury the heavens. The demonic sword moved and the demonic chi surged. Layers of sword chi appeared and soared into the heavens. The bury the heavens sword slashed down from the 9 heavens. Rumbling sounds rang out from the horizon. Karmic flames and demonic chi collided. The sky changed color and a heavy pressure fell down, causing the wasteland within 100 miles to violently sway. The demonic cultivator resisted the heavens and reached the most white-hot stage. With his sword in hand, the karmic flames that filled the sky found it difficult to descend. Heavy demonic essence rippled between the heavens and earth. Endless karmic flames spread throughout the world. At this moment, even the void began to burn. At the same time, an intense battle had already continued for an unknown period of time. With the power of the Nether King supporting him, Bai Zhang's cultivation wasn't weaker than anyone else's. With his sword in hand, he was extremely powerful. On the other hand, Li Luo was only an avatar. In the end, his strength was inferior to his main body. Because of this, he wasn't able to gain the upper hand. Saber and sword slashed across each other, causing a bloody light to shine. On the other side, faint traces of black energy began to scatter from the wound. Blue Blood Heaven Tears was one of the most famous swords of the divine religion, on par with the demon sword Samsara. In Bai Zhang's hands, its power was even more terrifying. Retreat. Seeing that Bai Zhang was no longer the same as before, Li Luo didn't want to continue fighting. He pushed away Bai Zhang with his saber and quickly retreated from the battle. Bai Zhang coldly snorted and didn't chase after him. The difference in strength between them wasn't too great, so there wasn't much meaning in chasing after him. Li Luo appeared at the Marquis mansion. Looking at the red-robed figure waiting in the courtyard, his eyes narrowed. It really was an avatar. Where had this brat's main body run off to? Lord Religion Master, I've been waiting for you for a long time. Ning Qin said. What is it? As his voice fell, Li Luo suddenly frowned. He swept his spiritual sense around and asked, where is Luofei? She's crossing tribulation. She should be back soon. Ning Qin replied. Before his voice fell, a devilish mist descended from the void. A white-haired figure in black robes walked out, holding the unconscious Luofei in her arms. With a wave of her hand, she flew down and landed in the Marquis mansion. Li Luo caught Luofei. Looking at the figure standing in the air, a light flashed in his eyes. I've rescued her. I look forward to seeing her again. I hope your sword doesn't disappoint me. The devilish mist dispersed and the demonic cultivator left. The skies above the Marquis mansion returned to calm. However, the hearts of those present grew even heavier. Miss Ruoshi, I'll have to trouble you. Li Luo carried Luofei into the room. He looked at the woman standing behind Ning Chen and sternly said. This is what Ruoshi should do. Ruoshi softly replied. Boy, if you don't cherish such a good girl, it'll be too late to regret it in the future. Li Luo glanced at the young man in front of Ruo Shi, his expression unprecedentedly solemn. Chapter 359. The cold autumn wind blew in the north. The ghost palanquin drove out of the Heaven's Gate and headed towards the northern Meng imperial court. On the palanquin, opposite Meng Xuanji, the red-robed Marquis Jiming closed his eyes. The drowsiness from not having rested for days flooded him. After all, the doppelganger was not as good as the main body. It had not reached the Khanate realm and could not hold on for long. When the moon was high up in the sky, Ning Chen walked out of the palanquin on the alienated mountain. Looking at the collapsed mountain, his eyes flickered. The river that stretched for hundreds of miles was destroyed by the powerful power of the underworld king. The river had collapsed and the water from the source washed over the broken mountain. Meng Xuanji followed behind him quietly. Her beautiful eyes were filled with unconcealable shock. No matter how many times she felt it, this kind of power that surpassed the mortal level would make people feel despair. The power of the underworld king was already so terrifying with the help of Bai Jiang. If the underworld king himself came, there would be no hope for the world. As they walked, Ning Chen suddenly stopped. He looked at the girl behind him and said, "Do you hear something?" Meng Xuanji came back to her senses and spread out her spiritual consciousness. She nodded and said, "It's in the west. It's very weak." Ning Chen changed his direction and walked towards the west. At a section where the river stopped flowing, there was a blurry human-shaped watery light that was constantly trembling. The mournful cries sounded like the weeping of a woman. The river was about to run out. The blurred water figure was getting weaker and weaker. The water demon that was shattered by Bai Jiang was about to disappear. Ning Chen looked at the water demon before him and sighed softly in his heart. This was already the second time they met. The first time, he spared her life. He didn't expect that this time, the miracle of life in this world wouldn't be able to escape this calamity. The water demon seemed to recognize the human in front of her. Her illusory body knelt down and begged. She was instinctively afraid of death. Even demons that had just gained intelligence were no exception. To save or not to save, it was often a matter of a strong person's thoughts. To the water demon, the human in front of her was undoubtedly a strong person. But to Ning Chen, whether he saved or not did not matter much. It was just a matter of whether he was willing to lift his hand. The cruelty of the human world was vividly displayed at this moment. In the end, for some unknown reason, Ning Chen still made a move. He lifted his right hand and a drop of blood dripped down from his finger, fusing into the water monster's body. In an instant, the powerful vitality of the phoenix blood erupted and quickly gathered the water monster's body that was about to dissipate. "Miss Meng," Ning Chen said. Meng Xuanji nodded. With a wave of her hand, the golden feather centipede flew out, leaving a dazzling streak of golden light in the sky. Amidst the rumbling sounds of breaking, a several thousand-foot-long ravine appeared on Alienation Mountain, reconnecting the destroyed river channel. At the source of the great river, the water flowed down along the newly opened channel downstream. "Let's go," Ning Chen called out, then continued walking towards the depths of Alienation Mountain. Meng Xuanji followed him. Before she left, she glanced at the water demons that had gathered together and left without looking back. Behind him, the water demon knelt down and thanked him. Her shrill voice sounded very pleasant to the ear. Perhaps many years later, neither of them would remember that they had saved a dying aquatic spirit creature back in Estrangement Mountain. However, that was a small favor, but to that aquatic spirit creature, it was indeed a memory and a favor that she would never forget for the rest of her life. In the depths of Alienation Mountain, the remnants of the great battle could still be seen clearly. His red robes danced in the wind. Ning Chen looked at the tragic aftermath of the battle and walked step by step on the pool of blood. The nine-headed snakelet was dead. Its entire body had been cut into dozens of pieces. The black-red ball of light that Li Luo had mentioned should be the source of the nine-headed snakelet. Based on this, it was very likely that the source of the eight-headed snakelet was the source of the eight-headed snakelet. From the looks of it, the descent of the seven absolutes heavens required these legendary beasts to be part of the process. Since the conditions for the advent of the underworld king had been determined, then Bai Zhang's role would end here. The next step was very clear. Kill Bai Jiang and Bai Time. Although the underworld king could increase a person's strength, there should be a limit. Getting rid of Bai Jiang was the most effective way to delay the advent of the underworld king. 15 minutes later, the ghost palanquin left Alienation Mountain and rushed toward Heavenly Lake. Bai Zhang's current strength was not weaker than the Eternal Night Hierarchs. It would not be easy to get rid of him. He had to gather as much power as possible. This was also his main goal. Heavenly Lake was filled with a cold aura. There was no one there. The ghost palanquin stopped and Ning Chen walked out. Just as he was about to go forward, a sword blocked his path. Jiming Marquis, you've come to the wrong place, said Si Mingjian calmly as he looked at the red-robed youth. I've come to pay a visit to the Golden Staff Imperial Tutor, said Ning Chen sincerely. Master hasn't returned yet, said Si Mingjian. Ning Chen narrowed his eyes. Hasn't returned yet? Could the Golden Staff Imperial Tutor still be in the Four Extremities realm? Many thanks. Ning Chen thanked him and turned to enter the palanquin, leaving with it. There was no need for Si Mingjian to lie. The Golden Staff Imperial Tutor should still be in the Four Extremities realm. This old man was truly obsessed with the phoenix blood. Ning Chen had just returned to the Marquis Manor when he received a secret report. Chu Li had awakened and had appeared on the western battlefield to help the Evernight army block the advance of the three dynasties. Sect Master, take a look for yourself. Ning Chen handed over the secret report with a cold glint in his eyes. Li Luo sighed heavily after reading the report. Although he had a good relationship with Chu Li, she was still one of the three martial crowns. Her loyalty to the Nether King was not something anyone could change. He had originally thought that Chu Li would be able to avoid a direct confrontation by keeping her unconscious, but she had still awakened. It seemed the Nether King's power to descend upon the divine continent was growing stronger and stronger. Even the restrictions he and the Jiming Marquis had set up together were unable to block it. I will personally deal with Chu Li's matter. You cannot attack her. That is also my bottom line, said Li Luo. Ning Chen narrowed his eyes. A dangerous aura pulsed within them, but it soon disappeared. Sect Master, I don't wish to see Chu Li become a second Bai Jiang, said Ning Chen slowly. They had finally gained the upper hand in the war against the Eternal Night cult. If a second Bai Jiang were to appear, the situation would immediately reverse. Most importantly, the matter of stopping the Nether King's descent was imminent. They could not afford any more variables. Li Luo did not wish to harm their relationship on this matter, so he changed the topic. How did this trip go? Did you manage to invite the Golden Staff Imperial Tutor? No. Ning Chen shook his head. The Golden Staff Imperial Tutor has yet to return from the Four Extremities realm. We can't count on him for the time being. How about we switch to the Abbot of the Crossing E Temple? He's too slow. It's not suitable. Li Luo immediately rejected. The Buddha in the mortal world could resist, but he was too slow. If they wanted to trap Bai Jiang, this would become a loophole. What about your main body? When will it return? Asked Li Luo with a frown. I'm not sure, but it should take a few more days. There's no time to wait, replied Ning Chen. Report. At this moment, another urgent report came from outside the Marquis Manor's backyard. A red-clothed guard from the Supreme Court knelt outside the courtyard with an urgent secret report in his hand. Ning Chen's eyes flickered. With a wave of his hand, the secret report flew into his hand. After reading it, Knowing Destiny's expression immediately darkened. The secret report came from the spy he had planted in Ascension Valley. The content was not complicated. Bai Jiang had gone to the Four Extremities realm through a spatial passage. After the master of the Four Extremities realm and Xian Ji were defeated, he had specially borrowed a Xiantian expert from the brave Marquis and hidden outside Ascension Valley. He had originally wanted to guard against the Four Extremities realm, but he had not expected to be used today. The black-clothed expert from the Three Disasters realm was undoubtedly Bai Jiang. This time, it was troublesome. Bai Jiang's purpose in going to the Four Extremities realm was obvious. The Eternal Night Cult had a short alliance with the Master of the Four Extremities realm, so his understanding of the Four Extremities realm was no less than Ning Chen's. The Divine Continent had desolate beasts, but so did the Four Extremities realm. Their whereabouts were even clearer. The Phoenix of Fengqi Mountain was already a secret that everyone knew. "Sect Master, we have to go to the Four Extremities realm," said Ning Chen gravely as he handed over the secret report. Li Luo's expression also changed when he saw the report. They had only been concerned with the situation in the Divine Continent and had neglected the Four Extremities realm. "We can't wait any longer. Let's move out immediately," said Li Luo. The Phoenix's level was different from Jiuying and Octahead. If Bai Jiang obtained it, the Nether King's descent would very likely become a reality. At that time, it would be too late. Fortunately, there was a chaotic flow of space at the end of the passage between the Divine Continent and the Four Extremities realm. It could buy them some time. Now, it was a competition to see who was faster. "Miss Meng, I'll leave the safety of the Marquis estate to you," said Ning Chen as he walked in front of Meng Xuanji. Meng Xuanji frowned and transmitted, "Don't you need me to go with you?" Ning Chen shook his head and transmitted back, "There's no need. With Senior Sword Bodhi here, there's no need to worry about my safety. I'll leave a letter for the western battlefield. If Chu Li attacks again, I hope Miss Meng can cooperate with Senior Marquis Triumph to capture him. However, don't take his life for now." Meng Xuanji nodded. Ning Chen returned to his study and wrote a letter. He placed it under his imperial seal and then walked out of the study. Seeing Li Luo and Sword Bodhi waiting outside, he said, "Let's go." The three of them immediately moved, heading towards Ascension Valley in the east of the Grand Xia. At the same time, a black-robed figure walked through the chaotic flow of space below the Four Extremities realm. A black aura surged, and the unique pressure of the Nether King spread out in waves. His speed was unbelievable. Half a day later, the three figures also appeared in the chaotic flow of space. Sword Bodhi's Sarah staff shone with a golden light as he protected the red-robed youth beside him. Li Luo circulated her body, and powerful true essence overflowed, increasing her speed as much as possible. No one dared to be careless in this battle of speed. Although the Phoenix had the fastest speed, no one knew if it could avoid this calamity when facing Bai Jiang, who had the power of the Nether King. No matter what, the Nether King could not descend. Otherwise, all hope would be completely destroyed. In the end, it was impossible for humans to defeat gods. The disaster 30,000 years ago was a bloody lesson. Chapter 360. Time flew by outside the chaotic streams of space. Within the chaotic streams of space, time stagnated and was difficult to sense. In the blink of an eye, 10 days passed. Bai Jiang, who had entered the chaotic streams of space first, was still one step ahead of everyone else. He appeared in the southeastern region of the Four Extremes. At the intersection of the western and southern borders, outside the 100,000 Great Mountains, Bai Jiang sped over without stopping at all and rushed into the mountain range. In the depths of the mountain range, a blood-red maple forest appeared. The legendary Phoenix Perch Mountain was right in front of him. Bai Jiang withdrew his aura and descended from the sky. Phoenixes were different from other vicious beasts. They controlled the speed of heaven and earth. Wanting to obtain a phoenix origin wasn't easy. Even he had to be careful. Just as Bai Jiang arrived at Phoenix Perch Mountain, Li Luo and the other two also walked out of the chaotic streams of space and appeared in the northwestern region of the four extremes. Ning Chen confirmed their position and immediately brought the two of them to the 100,000 mountains. At Phoenix Perch Mountain, a pair of phoenixes cried out and flames surged. In front of the phoenixes was a miserable figure holding a golden staff. He had already fought with the two phoenixes for several days. However, just like before, it was difficult for him to win. Phoenix flames burned the sky, creating a beautiful scene. The golden staff imperial teacher blocked with his staff, but he was forced back several steps. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. Although he wasn't heavily injured, he was still in pain. Just as the man and the two phoenixes were fighting, a black aura rapidly spread out in the battlefield. A black-robed figure walked over with a powerful pressure, shocking everyone. "How about we work together? After killing the phoenixes, we'll split the benefits equally," said Bai Jiang calmly. The golden staff imperial teacher's heart sank. He coldly said, "No need. We'll fight for it with our own ability." The person in front of him was stronger than the previous master of the four extremes. He wasn't stupid enough to ask a tiger for its skin. Bai Jiang sneered and no longer paid attention to him. He waved his hand and the blood jade tears heavens appeared. With a slash of his sword, the phoenix flames rapidly scattered. The phoenixes sensed the strength of the human in front of them and cried out. The flames around them turned from red to deep blue and crazily surged out. A pointless struggle. Bai Jiang flipped his left palm and the power of the Nether King surged out of his body. A heavy pressure reverberated through heaven and earth. The Phoenix True Fire couldn't approach him at all. A black figure flashed past. Green blood tears, green light illuminated the world. The instant the sword appeared, the space trembled. 100 zhang long ravine split open. The two phoenixes hurriedly dodged, but their enormous bodies couldn't completely dodge. Blood gushed out. A terrifying sword wound appeared on one of the phoenix's abdomen, so deep that bone could be seen. The golden staff imperial preceptor's eyes flickered. His figure flashed rapidly, wanting to collect the phoenix blood that was spilling out. Just as he was about to do so, the phoenix blood that was gushing out suddenly burst into flames. In the blink of an eye, it dissipated into nothingness. "Fuck off." Seeing that the golden staff imperial tutor was in the way, Bai Jiang's eyes turned cold. He slashed out with his sword, and a blue blood mark tore through space and reached the imperial tutor's chest. The golden staff imperial advisor's heart trembled violently. He waved his golden staff to block the sword light. With a loud bang, the golden staff imperial preceptor was sent flying more than 30 meters away. Blood continuously flowed from his hands. With just one move, he had already suffered serious injuries. The absolute suppression of strength did not allow the weak to be on the same path. The golden staff imperial advisor suppressed his anger and retreated from the battle. He knew very well that he had no chance of winning against such a strong opponent. Suddenly, the golden staff imperial preceptor's eyes shook. He looked to the north. Why had that brat returned? In the distance, Ning Chen was holding the golden staff imperial preceptor's golden staff imperial preceptor had given him back then. He was constantly pouring his true essence into it, trying to contact the latter. Soon, the golden staff imperial preceptor responded to Ning Chen's call by releasing his aura. He really is there. Ning Chen looked in the direction of the 100,000 mountains. Was this old man really planning to deal with the two phoenixes by himself? On Phoenix Perch Mountain, Bai Jiang was facing the two phoenixes. The overwhelming battle had caused the two phoenixes' injuries to become more and more serious. The wounds that had been cut by the crimson blood heaven's tears still had some remnant energy that prevented them from recovering. The two phoenixes cried out in grief. They had no choice but to abandon their resting place and quickly rush out of the 100,000 mountains. You want to escape? Do you think it's that easy? Bai Jiang snorted coldly. He opened his hands, and black chains appeared. They trapped the sky and locked down the earth, forming a huge net that sealed off the surrounding area. Within the crisscrossing black chains, the two phoenixes' path was blocked. Phoenix cries resounded throughout the world. It was the end of the phoenixes, and it was difficult to find a way out. At this moment, one of the phoenixes let out a cry and burned its own body, using its flame of life to open a path for the other phoenixes to escape. The golden flames were unstoppable. Even the black chains could not stop them. They shattered one after another, and a path appeared in front of them. It was the only path that led to hope. The other phoenix's eyes were filled with grief. It could feel its companion's vitality rapidly declining. It cried out in grief, shaking heaven and earth. None of you can escape. Bai Jiang's figure shot out. Crimson blood heaven's tears tore through the void and slashed at the two phoenixes. One of the phoenixes that had burned its own life spread its wings and blocked the crimson blood heaven's tears. It cried out, urging its companion to escape. With a loud bang, the crimson blood heaven's tears gushed out. In the next moment, the golden flames spread. In the final moments of its life, it wanted to drag the humans in front of it to the yellow springs. The crimson blood heaven's tears cut open the phoenix's body. Bai Jiang raised his hand and stabbed it into the phoenix's chest. In front of absolute power, any struggle was powerless. Its final cry was filled with endless regret and resentment. Its flame of life burned away all traces of the phoenix's existence, but it was unable to do anything to the humans within. After being trapped for 10,000 years and then suffering a great calamity, the phoenix's lives had been filled with ups and downs. Seeing its companion die, the other phoenix was filled with grief and fury. Just as it was about to charge out, the black chains reconnected, sealing its path. I said none of you can escape. Bai Jiang's figure flickered and he appeared on top of the phoenixes. A cold light flashed in his eyes, and he slammed his palm into the phoenix's chest. With a bang, the phoenixes were heavily injured. They fell from the sky and smashed into the ground, kicking up dust. Bai Jiang followed, slashing down with his sword, wanting to end the phoenixes' lives. But at this moment, the battle changed. The Suo Luo sword slashed through the chains and blocked the crimson blood heaven. The two swords collided, and sword chi flew everywhere. Then four figures walked over. Ning Chen looked at the destroyed Phoenix Perch Mountain and his heart sank. Had they still come too late? Marquis Jiming, you actually didn't die. Bai Jiang couldn't hide his killing intent as he looked at the red-robed youth. Before I send you to hell, of course I'll live well, said Ning Chen calmly. Their daos were different, and they didn't want to talk too much. Two figures shot out from Ning Chen's side. Sword and saber light cut through the darkness as they shot toward Bai Jiang. Bai Jiang raised his sword to block, his Nether King aura reaching its peak. Sword and saber light collided in the blink of an eye, shaking the heavens. The battle instantly reached a white-hot level. Sword and saber intersected, and life and death were only a hair's breadth away. Jiming hadn't attacked yet, and Bai Jiang had many misgivings when he attacked. Adding on the fact that he was fighting 1 against 2, it was difficult for him to gain the upper hand. Blue blood tears heaven's tears kept ringing, dancing in the sword and saber light. Rays of killing intent scattered in all directions, creating bottomless ravines on the ground. On Phoenix Perch Mountain, the parasol tree fell, unable to withstand the waves of the battle. A faint light flashed through the dying phoenix's eyes. There was sadness, hatred, and relief. After hiding for tens of thousands of years, it finally didn't have to hide anymore. The mournful cry was a call to its companions. Wait for me on the road to the underworld. The next moment, golden flames burned around the phoenix. The phoenix was proud all its life. Even if it died, it wouldn't let a human desecrate its body. Looking at the phoenix in the golden flames, Ning Chen's eyes showed a trace of sadness. They had once fought side by side, and he didn't expect that they would meet again at the moment of life and death. The phoenix origin flew out and flew toward the only human recognized by the phoenix. Together with the phoenix origin, it entered Ning Chen's body with the last trust of its life. In the battle, Bai Zhang's expression changed slightly. He pushed away the Bodhi in front of him with his sword and was about to take the phoenix origin. However, the saber had already arrived and blocked his path. Farewell, human. The phoenix's last consciousness gradually dissipated. Its life was over. At this moment, a golden pillar of light shot into the sky. All the Xiantian experts in the four extremes looked toward Phoenix Perch Mountain. What was going on? Bai Zhang's pupils shrank. Xiantian tribulation. How could it be? Marquis Jiming was already a Xiantian expert. How could such a phenomenon appear again? With the phoenix origin in his body, his clone rushed to the Xiantian realm. Ning Chen wanted to use the Chaos Scroll to hide his aura, but it was too late. He focused on dealing with the Sky Demon tribulation. Senior Golden Staff, please protect me. I'll be eternally grateful. Ning Chen glanced at the Golden Staff Imperial Tutor and said calmly. At this time, the Golden Staff Imperial Tutor also recovered from his shock. His expression changed again and again, but he still nodded and agreed to the former's request. Black demonic chi rushed down from the golden pillar of light. At the same time, a sea of fire burned in the sky, illuminating the sun. Two tribulations in the sky rose endlessly on Phoenix Perch Mountain. The terrifying power shocked the entire four extremes. Retreat. As the heavenly fire fell, everyone in the battle quickly retreated. They didn't want to be affected by the Xiantian tribulation. There was a gap in the siege. Bai Jiang took the opportunity to swing his sword. A green sword light flashed and swept toward Ning Chen. The Golden Staff Imperial Tutor's golden staff rang. The staff gathered energy and blocked the sword light. A pool of blood spilled on the ground. The Golden Staff Imperial Tutor was heavily injured again. He looked back at the young man who was going through the tribulation. His eyes darkened. This time, he hoped he made the right decision. The two experts who came with this kid were not simple. Moreover, there was a big problem with this kid's body. The Golden Staff Imperial Tutor was a smart man. He knew what was best for him. The Marquis Jiming was no longer the junior he could bully. Giving him a favor was the best choice. In the golden pillar of light, the sky demon heavenly fire burned Ning Chen. The cry of the phoenix resounded through the sky. An illusory phoenix shadow appeared behind Ning Chen. A strong power swept out. From the ghost palanquin behind, the purple gold Yama divine sword flew out and fell into Jiming's hand. The Yama divine sword was sharpened again. The heavy phoenix origin gathered on the sword. In an instant, the blood-red light shone brightly with a trace of dazzling gold. The moment the sword came out, it changed the wind and clouds and created a sea of fire. Chapter 361. The heavenly fire opened and red clothes appeared. Ning Zhang's figure instantly appeared in the middle of the battle. His divine weapon appeared and his sword pierced through the air. The sudden sword was so fast that no one could react to it. It was out of everyone's expectations. Before they could react, the sword had already entered their body. Ugh! The sword entered 3 inches and black chi gushed out. Bai Jiang endured the pain in his chest and sent out a palm strike. Vigorous true yuan surged and pressed towards Ning Jiang. Bodhi condensed a seal and received the palm strike. The shockwaves shook the surroundings. In that instant, red clothes retreated, avoiding the shockwaves that scattered in all directions. Knowing destiny Marquis, you've become weak. Bai Jiang suppressed the injury in his chest and looked at the red-clothed youth in front of him. It's enough to deal with you. Ning Chen's figure moved again. His sword cut through the wind and clouds. Red clothes left behind afterimages as he rushed forward again. Bai Zhang's pupils shrank. So fast. The speed in the blink of an eye exceeded the limit of the physical body. Traces of blood flowed out of Ning Chen's body. It was the backlash of the physical body not being able to keep up with the speed. Knowing destiny had grasped the phoenix origin and at the same time had inherited the phoenix extreme speed. However, the human body was not as strong as the phoenix body. Under the extreme speed that exceeded one's cultivation, one had to bear the backlash. The tip of the sword drew a brilliant red light across Fengqi Mountain. It was so fast that it was shocking. Seeing this, Bodhi and Li Luo joined forces to suppress Bai Zhang's Nether King power. Together with knowing destiny, they killed Wu Guan. 2 blocked the attack and 1 took the life. The 3 cooperated in an orderly manner. Bai Zhang's situation immediately became dangerous. The phoenix body's cultivation foundation was not as good as the main body's. It could not take the Nether King's power head-on. However, with the protection of the 2, there was no need to worry about the rear. A purple gold sword shone brightly with bloody light. The tip of the sword was endless. Bai Zhang's move was suppressed. Red clothes swept past and blood splashed out, dyeing the maple leaves in the sky red. 3 against 1, the strongest combination. There was no gap between them. The sword light flowed and the road to the underworld appeared. Ugh! Suddenly, the Nether King's sword pierced through Bai Zhang's body. Blood flowed out of the corner of his mouth. His aura shook violently and the black light kept extinguishing. Nether descends, heaven's tears. Suffering another heavy blow, Bai Zhang took half a step back. At the moment of life and death, a dark aura as heavy as a bottomless abyss gushed out. Suddenly, the heavens and earth lost their balance, and the whole Fengqi mountain shook. A terrifying pressure descended. The Nether King opened his eyes, and his aura changed. His dark and cold eyes were devoid of any human emotions. Just a glance was enough to cause the 3 people in front of him to feel as if they had been severely injured. Their hearts throbbed violently. Human, step back. His words were calm and emotionless. A terrifying aura spread out, and the 3 of them were immediately sent flying. Their blood dyed the sand red. Strong, indescribably strong. The Nether King moved, a black light flashed, instantly appearing in front of Li Luo. With a flip of his palm, an endless amount of black qi gathered. With a bang, heaven and earth trembled. Li Luo's eyes narrowed as he raised his saber to block the attack. However, a loud bang was heard as the saber shattered into pieces. A red and green figure flew out, blood splattering all over the sky. Next, you. Nether King Ha raised his hand. Raging winds and raging mists surged with divine might, sweeping towards Bodhi who was standing not far away. Jian Bodhi's expression froze. Buddhist light flickered, and his Buddhist energy soared to meet the Nether King's divine might. With a loud bang, Bodhi was forced back a dozen steps. Blood splashed out of his mouth, dyeing his clothes red. In just a breath's time, the situation had rapidly reversed. The Nether King who had borrowed Bai Zhang's body to descend was shockingly powerful. Retreat. Ning Chen recovered and suppressed his shock. His red robes flickered as he brought the heavily injured Li Luo and Jian Bodhi away. Outside the battle, the Golden Staff Imperial Teacher didn't dare stay for even half a moment. His feet moved, and he also left. Looking at the 4 of them leaving, the Nether King's eyes flashed with a cold light. In the next moment, his terrifying pressure scattered, and he returned to his original appearance. Many thanks for saving us, Master. Bai Zhang suppressed his injuries and respectfully said. Your body is no longer capable of withstanding my power. Quickly bring back the Phoenix origin and prepare the final extreme sky formation. The Nether King's voice echoed between heaven and earth. Yes, replied Bai Zhang. To the southwest of the 100,000 mountains, Ning Chen appeared with the heavily injured Jian Bodi and Li Luo. The Golden Staff Imperial teacher followed behind them. Because he had received several of Bai Zhang's attacks, his injuries weren't light. Seniors, please focus on healing your injuries. Junior will stand guard on the side, said Ning Chen. Li Luo and Jian Bodi nodded. They didn't say anything and immediately sat down to focus on healing. Although the Golden Staff Imperial teacher had many questions, he knew now wasn't the time to ask. He walked to the side and first circulated his energy to suppress his injuries. Ning Chen looked in the direction of Phoenix Perch Mountain, his heart heavy. There had been too many variables in this battle. The final terrifying aura that had appeared was without a doubt the Nether King. All he could feel was one word, powerful. So powerful that it made him despair. In the end, the Phoenix origin had still ended up in Bai Zhang's hands. The Nether King's descent wouldn't be far off. How to stop it would be the biggest problem in the future. Ning Chen closed his eyes, and blood qi soared around him. He used blood to refine his soul, notifying his main body of the danger. At the same time, in the Qizhou mountain range, within the Taoye's stomach, a white-robed figure trembled. She felt an intense pain in her divine sense and suddenly opened her eyes. Seeing her awaken, Dao Kuei waved his hand, and the black and white swords protecting the Taiji Yin-Yang formation transformed into streams of light that returned to the zither. "What is it?" asked Jiang Wangji. "My clone gave me a warning. Something must have happened outside." "Senior, I need to go out," said Ning Chen gravely. Jiang Wangji frowned, but he didn't stop him. "Be careful. You still haven't completely cultivated the life scrolls restrictions. Don't waste too much time. Also, your fifth tribulation should have arrived. Once you go out, do your best to suppress your tribulation. Otherwise, if the three calamities arrive, it will be extremely dangerous." "Yes." Ning Chen nodded. His figure flickered as he flew in the direction he had come from. Jiang Wangji plucked the zither, and a profound sound rang out. The Taotai opened its mouth, and a white light shot out and disappeared. Within the Grand Xia's imperial city, within the Marquis mansion, knowing destiny returned. After asking Meng Xuanji, his expression became serious. "Where's Luofei? Is she awake?" asked Ning Chen. "She's awake. She's in her room," replied Meng Xuanji. Ning Chen turned and walked out of the study. He went to Luofei's room and knocked on the door. "Please enter." A woman's voice came from the room. Ning Chen pushed open the door and entered. He looked at the woman in front of him and seriously said, "Luofei, I want to see the Eternal Night Religion Master." Immediately. Luofei frowned. She stood up and said, "Let's go." A moment later, the two of them left the Marquis mansion and rushed west. Two people appeared in front of the Eternal Night God sect. Luofei took 2 steps forward and pressed a hand against the array formation. Suddenly, a white moonlight spread out and an entrance to the array formation appeared. Ning Chen followed her in. Just as he was about to continue, a blue spear light shot out. Luofei narrowed her eyes and her figure flashed. She flipped her palm to block the spear light. She said, "You go first." "I'll block her." Ning Chen nodded. His feet moved and he rushed forward. "Luofei, you really betrayed the God sect." Chu Li's expression was ugly as he angrily shouted. "I'm sorry." Luofei didn't explain. Moonlight flashed in her hand. This was the first time she had attacked since she stepped into the 3 disasters. Chu Li waved his spear to meet her. The blue spear light was swift and fierce, showing no mercy at all. As the two of them fought, Ning Chen followed the path that Luofei had pointed out to him. They were running out of time, so they had to act as quickly as possible. The 3 great temples were already empty. In addition to Chu Li being blocked, the god sect's combat strength had temporarily entered a period of weakness. Ning Chen moved faster and faster. Before the Deep King noticed him, he rushed towards the forbidden area in the north of the god sect. Northern Tomb, the tomb of the god sect's previous temple masters. Ning Chen rushed over and cut open the layers of spells in front of him. Seeing the solemn stone tombs, he came to the newest one and said, "Religion Master, it's time." As soon as he finished his words, the earth rumbled and trembled. The next moment, the tomb made of huge stones collapsed. A handsome figure in black and red battle clothes walked out of the rubble. He glanced at the young man in front of him and said calmly, "Jiming Marquis, I finally found you." Time was tight. Ning Chen didn't want to waste any more time. He quickly explained the situation and then asked, "Religion Master, what is your choice?" "I'll risk my life to accompany you," the Eternal Knight Religion Master said. After getting an affirmative answer, Ning Chen's expression became serious. He said, "Then please open the Central Spirit region. Follow me." The Eternal Knight Religion Master stepped forward. The Eternal Knight Religion Master's appearance shocked everyone in the god sect. The patrolling guards couldn't hide the shock on their faces. They were in a dilemma and didn't know what to do. "Retreat." The Eternal Knight Religion Master waved his hand and a powerful aura spread out. The guards along the way were all pushed back by more than 10 zhang. Ning Chen followed behind, his eyes flickering. Without a doubt, the Eternal Knight Religion Master's original body was stronger than his doppelganger. However, their next opponent was the Deep King, who had surpassed the limits of human martial arts. No one could guarantee the result. This was different from any previous opponents. With the strength of the Nether King's level, no matter how many people went in, it would only increase the number of casualties. He and the Eternal Knight Hierarch were the two with the strongest foundation in the Divine Great Land. If they couldn't resist, the others would only be sending themselves to their deaths. When they passed by the first shrine, Ning Chen stopped. He looked at the shrine and said, "Can we take the Eternal Knight Divine Scripture with us?" The Eternal Knight Religion Master shook his head and said, "No. Once there is something wrong with the Divine Scripture, the Deep King will notice it immediately. Now, destroying the Central Spirit region is more important. We will think of a way to take the Divine Scripture later." "Okay." Ning Chen nodded and continued to walk forward. In the third shrine, two people walked over. The Eternal Knight Religion Master stopped and said, "Let me borrow the divine weapon of the Deep King." Ning Chen nodded and waved his right hand. The blood-colored demonic blade flew out and landed in the former's hand. The Eternal Knight Religion Master held the demonic blade and activated his true yuan. A powerful pressure shook the shrine. The matrix in the shrine felt it and many matrix patterns appeared, emitting dazzling light. The demonic blade slashed across and the space trembled. A huge hole opened. It was pitch black and silent. The Eternal Knight Sect Master and Ning Chen walked in one after the other. The giant spatial ravine immediately closed up, and the formation patterns in the hall also disappeared. Peace was restored once more. Chapter 362. A cold and desolate space connected the Divine Continent and the Nether King's world. It was a desolate place with no signs of life. This dead world had been strengthened by generations of Xiantian experts of the Eternal Knight God Sect, and it was gradually stabilizing. The Eternal Knight Sect leader and Ning Chen hurried toward the smoke cloud divine dagger axe. They wanted to retrieve the divine weapon before the Nether King noticed. Bai Jiang had left, and Chu Li was blocked. No one in the Eternal Knight God Sect could talk to the Nether King directly. This was the best opportunity for the two of them. They couldn't miss it. The two of them flew through the boundless space, their speed increasing. The smoke cloud divine dagger axe wasn't far from them. The Eternal Knight Sect leader's figure turned into a black and red light. Su Yi followed closely behind. She was highly focused and vigilant of her surroundings. "We're here." The Eternal Night Hierarch stopped in his tracks. Not far in front of him, a weapon appraisal platform could be vaguely seen amidst the dense fog. On the platform, a divine weapon stood upright, its powerful aura spreading out continuously. The Smoke Cloud Divine Dagger Axe, the #1 divine weapon of the Eternal Night God sect, finally appeared in front of them. The Misty Cloud Divine Spear has a mark left by the Lord of Hell. If you want to pull it out, the Lord of Hell will be alerted. I need 10 breaths of time. Are you sure you can block it? The Eternal Night Hierarch glanced at the young man beside him and asked in a deep voice. "We'll know after we try," said Ningchen gravely. I'll try my best. Be careful." The Eternal Night sect leader stepped into the fog and stood in front of the weapon appraisal platform. A black and red light rose around him. He reached out and grabbed the Smoke Cloud Divine Dagger Axe. After a short moment of silence, a powerful repulsive force erupted from the Smoke Cloud Divine Dagger Axe. A black aura surged, resisting the Eternal Night sect leader's power. At this moment, black clouds gathered in the sky. Thunder rumbled, and a terrifying aura appeared. It was divine and heavy. As soon as it appeared, it made people feel an unprecedented pressure. "It's here." Ning Chen's expression became serious. Looking at the black light gathering in the sky, he clenched his right hand, and a green sparrow flew into his hand. "Human, we meet again." A huge demonic figure with black wings appeared in the black light. The Nether King's incarnation was not human, but a demonic figure. The terrifying pressure made people feel like thousands of mountains were pressing down on them. He really is as strong as a monster. Looking at the 10-meter-tall Nether King's demonic form, Ning Chen's heart sank. His body's energy surged, resisting the Nether King's power. In front of the appraisal platform, the Eternal Night Hierarch felt the arrival of the Nether King. He activated his true essence once more and tried his best to speed up the collection of the divine weapons. "Traitor, your choice has disappointed me." The demonic image spoke as the wings on its back flapped slowly. The next moment, demonic power gathered, and a vast aura swept out, rushing toward the Eternal Night Hierarch who was standing in front of the weapon evaluation platform. Seeing this, Ning Chen stepped on the water and instantly appeared in front of him. With a flip of his palm, endless cold air surged out. His palm met the demonic power head-on and blocked the life-threatening danger. With a hung sound, the ice and snow collapsed. Her white clothes were dyed red, and she retreated several steps. Dao Kuei had personally taught him the knowing destiny state. With the 4 scrolls of heaven, earth, life, and nothingness in his body, his foundation was unparalleled in the world. Although he had yet to pass the heavenly tribulation, his cultivation was actually not inferior to that of the 3 disasters. However, in the face of the limited power of the devil form of Pluto, he was defeated in just one move and suffered heavy injuries. The terrifying aftershock spread out in all directions of the central spirit region. The space shook violently and became extremely unstable. The man-made space of nothingness originally did not exist. It was only created to connect the divine prefecture and the world where the Nether King was. Although it had been strengthened by the Eternal Night Hierarch for generations and had become increasingly stable, there was still a limit to its endurance. Under the divine power of the Nether King, it showed signs of collapsing. The devil form of Pluto held back another 30% of its power. With a flap of its wings, it arrived in front of the knowing destiny state in an instant. With a stomp, a heavy aura fell from the sky along with the distorted space. The divine power came again. Ning Chen shouted softly and activated his true essence to the limit. In an instant, snow fell from the sky and waves roared. He used all his strength to block the descending divine power. With a hung sound, the sky collapsed and thousands of waves scattered. Blood and chi kept rolling around Ning Chen, and he retreated several steps. After the knowing destiny state retreated, the devil form of Pluto moved again. Its palm condensed demonic aura and slapped toward the mist. Ning Chen endured his injuries and rushed forward. The blue sparrow condensed into frost and a sword cut open the sky. The sword light cut open the demonic aura, and the aftermath was vast and mighty. The blue sparrow cried sadly, and the knowing destiny state splashed blood. Hierarch, if you still can't pull out the smoke cloud divine spear, you can prepare to collect my corpse. 10 breaths had passed. Ning Chen wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and looked at the terrifying devil form of Pluto in front of him. In front of the weapon appraisal platform, the Eternal Night Hierarch was surrounded by black and red blood lightning. On the smoke cloud divine spear, red lightning surged. With a hong sound, the divine weapon was pulled out, and the mist dispersed. The Eternal Night Hierarch, who had regained his weapon, broke through the limit and rushed into the third disaster. Where is Zi's soul? Seeing the former take back the divine spear, Ning Chen asked seriously. The Eternal Night Hierarch spread out his spiritual consciousness and used the power of the smoke cloud divine spear to quickly search the entire central spirit region for Xia Zi's trapped soul. Southeast, the Eternal Night Hierarch said in a deep voice. Thank you. Ning Chen waved his sword, and a cold light appeared. His body turned into a water shadow and rushed to the right. The Eternal Night Hierarch also waved his divine spear, and with a move that shocked the gods, he quickly retreated. The Nether King raised his hand, and the light of the spear dissipated. He flapped his wings and chased after the Eternal Night Hierarch. 3 figures flashed through the void. The devil form was unbelievably fast, and it was about to catch up in the blink of an eye. You save him. I'll block him. The Eternal Night Hierarch stopped and said. Be careful. Ning Chen warned. He didn't say anything else and continued to rush forward. Luoli, you were the master of the divine prefecture. What a pity, the Nether King's devil form said coldly. Ha! The Eternal Night Hierarch chuckled and said indifferently, I'm not interested in a blood-washed master of the divine prefecture. Leave your gift to others. Foolish. The devil form snorted and flapped its wings. Black demonic aura surged out, and a terrifying aura descended once again. The Eternal Night Hierarch's expression became serious. He circulated his energy, and the smoke cloud divine spear spun like lightning. The divine weapon's brilliance slashed down and collided with the demonic aura. The Eternal Night Hierarch took 3 steps back, and the blood in his body surged violently. Not bad, the Nether King said indifferently. Normally, this is what I would say about others. The Eternal Night Hierarch raised his spear and charged into the sky. His true yuan connected heaven and earth, and his divine weapon gathered in the smoke cloud. He slashed at the Nether King's devil form. As the spear fell, the devil form flipped its palm and raised it into the sky. Rumbling sounds could be heard as spatial cracks appeared. The central spirit region, which had lost the support of the divine weapon, finally couldn't hold on and began to collapse. Back off. The Nether King flipped his palm, and the demonic aura surged. The Eternal Night Hierarch blocked the attack with his spear and retreated, his mouth red. On the right side of the battlefield, Ning Chen finally arrived at the place where Xia Zi's soul was trapped. There were many prisons floating in the void, and all kinds of horrifying creatures appeared in front of him. Although most of their power had been sealed by the Nether King, the remaining pressure was still enough to shock people. Let me go, and I'll help you become the master of the world. Let me go, and I'll help you deal with the 7 absolute heavens. Demonic voices echoed in Ning Chen's ears, but he didn't pay any attention to them. He directly arrived in front of Xia Zi's prison and slashed out with his sword, wanting to break the prison that trapped him. Good friend, you still came, said Xia Zi as he opened his eyes. It was a familiar voice and a familiar warmth. Of the 3 souls, the only one that hadn't been completely demonized was still conscious. But because of that, the Nether King had suppressed it and prevented it from leaving. I'll take you away. The sword collided with the prison, but a loud explosion rang out. Black aura surged out, and he couldn't break it. It's useless. Every prison here is supported by the Nether King's power. You should quickly leave, said Xia Zi. Cut the crap. It's already a mess outside. If you don't come out and help, I won't be able to hold on. Ning Chen clenched his left hand, and remembrance appeared in his hand. His saber and sword moved together, and the 4 scrolls resonated with each other. A destructive aura circulated and crashed into the prison. The gradually unstable space violently distorted. Under the power of the void scroll, a flaw appeared in the indestructible prison. Fissures appeared, and it immediately collapsed. Ning Chen went forward and supported Xia Zi. The life scroll entered his body and stabilized his soul. He then turned into a ray of light and returned. Sect Master, retreat. Ning Chen had already rescued Xia Zi, and he had already achieved his goal. He didn't stop fighting the Eternal Night Sect Master and quickly left. When the Eternal Night Sect Master heard the sound transmission, he waved his spear and instantly left. You want to leave? Wishful thinking. The Nether King's demonic image waved its hand to disperse the incoming attack. Its wings flapped, and a black light streaked across the sky. In just a few breaths' time, it once again blocked the 2 of them. A surging demonic aura surged out and immediately separated, crushing the 2 of them. Ning Chen and the Eternal Night Sect Master used their techniques to block, but they were heavily injured once again. Destroy this place. Ning Chen steadied himself and said in a deep voice. Yes. The Eternal Night Sect Master nodded. The smoky cloud divine spear in his hand gathered his true essence. Suddenly, lightning surged, and clouds rolled. Ning Chen used his techniques at the same time. His sword and saber hummed, and the void scroll was pushed to the peak. A destructive aura overflowed and rose rapidly. The 2 techniques converged and crashed into the top of the void. The central spirit region, which had just gone through a great battle, couldn't bear it anymore and quickly collapsed. The Nether King's demonic image couldn't stop it in time. Its eyes turned cold, and the demonic image collapsed. A black aura surged, and its true form was about to appear. An extremely terrifying aura rose, causing the divine prefecture to tremble. Go! After one move, the 2 of them quickly retreated, rushing toward the gap between the central spirit region and the divine prefecture. The divine spear was taken away, and the central spirit region that connected the 2 worlds collapsed. The hope of the Nether King's descent was about to be destroyed. However, hope was always too good, and reality was always cruel. In the black aura that filled the sky, the Nether King's true form was revealed. His back was facing the 2 of them, and his long black hair fluttered in the void. His face couldn't be seen clearly. With a flip of his hand, a powerful force surged out, passing through the endless space and forcefully pulling the 2 worlds that were about to separate. At the gap, the 2 of them who were leaving were shocked for the last time. In the next moment, they disappeared. Chapter 363. 2 figures appeared in the 3rd divine temple of Eternal Night. They both vomited blood, dyeing the ground red. The terrifying Nether King, even in the central spirit region where his strength was severely limited, was still unrivaled. His moves were extremely powerful and difficult to resist. The 2 of them were the strongest combination in the world, but they were still injured to this extent. One could imagine what kind of calamity would befall them if the Nether King truly descended. Luofei is still waiting outside. Let's leave quickly. Ning Chen suppressed his injuries and said. The Eternal Night Hierarch nodded, put away his divine dagger axe, and quickly left. The Nether King had pulled the 2 realms together, preventing them from completely separating. This way, the Nether King could borrow part of his power from the dark abyss to descend at any time. They couldn't stay here for long. Within the Eternal Night cult's great array, Luofei, and Chu Li's battle was still ongoing. In the moonlight, the fierce blue spear shadows showed no mercy. Every move was tricky and difficult to deal with. Luofei's body was surrounded by moonlight. The scroll of moon appeared in her hand, resisting the ruthless spear shadows. The surging pressure surged all around, making it difficult to determine the victor. Two figures appeared in the battle. Just as they were about to join forces to restrain Chu Li, a terrifying aura spread out from the depths of the Eternal Night cult. It was so heavy that it made it difficult for them to breathe. "Let's go." The Eternal Night Hierarch's eyes narrowed. He flipped his palm and pushed Chu Li back. The Nether King was about to appear. The three didn't dare to stay any longer and quickly left. Chu Li steadied himself and looked at the departing black-red figures. Disappointment and anger flashed in his beautiful eyes. He had actually betrayed the Eternal Night cult. Grand Xia Imperial City, Knowing Destiny Marquis Manor. After the three returned, Ning Qin didn't stay and returned to Qizhou Mountain. The Eternal Night Hierarch was in seclusion to heal his injuries. Resisting the Nether King's demon image was more difficult than expected. Before the third calamity descended, he had to suppress his injuries as soon as possible. Luofei left with Zi's soul, accepting the mission of finding the demon body. Qizhou Mountain Range, within the belly of the Taotai, the ancient zither vibrated. The black and white ancient sword flew out and opened the Dao Gate's Taiji Yin Yang Great Array. Jiang Wangji looked at the seriously injured young man and said, "From now on, before the Two Lives scroll reaches equilibrium, you cannot go out again. You should learn to trust them." "Okay." Ning Qin nodded and agreed softly. At the same time, in the Four Extremities, Bai Jiang was preparing to return with Feng Yuan. Jian Bodi and Li Luo temporarily suppressed their injuries and chased after them. They were determined to stop Bai Jiang from returning to the Divine Land. In the Four Extreme Holy Lands, a red-clothed figure appeared. His appearance changed, and he turned into someone else. Wan Fengchen immediately sensed the arrival of an innate realm master. His figure flashed and he arrived before the sacred ground. "Why have you come?" Wan Fengchen recognized this person and asked. "It's a long story. The twin phoenixes of Feng's Perch Mountain fell, and the phoenix origin was taken away by Bai Jiang." Ning Qin quickly explained what happened recently. In the Four Extremes, the Holy Land's influence was hard to match. The most important thing now was to prevent Feng Yuan from being brought back to the Divine Land. With Wan Fengchen's help, it would be of great help. Hearing the former's words, Wan Fengchen nodded and said, "Come with me." Within the Holy Palace, a person was sitting cross-legged. Blood Yuan surrounded him, and a powerful aura circulated around him. He was constantly trying to break through to the third calamity. After being chased by Jian Bodi for 100 years, their cultivations had also been stuck at the peak of the second calamity for 100 years. The third calamity was the final stage of the innate realm, and it was extremely difficult to break through. In the past 100 years, Rong Lu had tried several times, but he had never been able to take that crucial step. He needed an opportunity to break through. Back in the Jiming Marquis Manor, he had seen that opportunity. The Jiming Marquis Phoenix bloodline was truly powerful. Unfortunately, Jian Bodi had stopped him. Just at this moment, the Holy Palace's doors opened, and two red-clothed figures walked in. They were similar, but they were different. Rong Lu opened his eyes and frowned when he saw the unfamiliar youth beside Wan Fengchen. "Who is he?" asked Rong Lu. He had already warned them not to disturb his cultivation unless it was an important period. For Wan Fengchen, the master of a holy land, to personally bring this person over was truly extraordinary. Xianing, a spy personally raised by master in the early years. He's in charge of gathering information, and his speed is unmatched in the Four Extremities, introduced Wan Fengchen. "Oh." Rong Lu narrowed his eyes and his figure flickered, grabbing at the person in front of him. His red robes flashed, and a dazzling red light streaked through the holy palace. He had already dodged several of Luan Feng's attacks. Rong Lu pulled back his hand, shock flashing through his eyes. What speed! Why did you bring him here? Rong Lu knew that Luan Fengchen wouldn't bring someone like this for no reason. Xianing, you tell him, said Luan Fengchen calmly. Ning Qin nodded and took a step forward, his expression grave. A battle broke out in Phoenix Perch. By the time I arrived, the two phoenixes had already fallen, and the phoenix origin had been taken away by a black-robed man. What? Rong Lu's expression immediately changed. How was that possible? Phoenixes controlled the world's speed, and even 3 calamities experts would find it difficult to catch up to them. Killing them was incredibly difficult. Did you see any special characteristics of that person? Asked Rong Lu. Yes. Ning Qin nodded and described Bai Zhang's appearance in detail. It's him. Killing intent flashed through Rong Lu's eyes. He couldn't be wrong. The number of 3 calamities experts in the 4 extreme realms could be counted on one hand. That person had to be Bai Zhang. There were 2 other people present. Ning Qin added, describing Li Luo and Jian Bodi's appearances. Rong Lu was also familiar with those 2. Now it would be even more disadvantageous for him to obtain the Phoenix origin. I've already helped you unify the Holy Land's divided forces. Now it's time for you to fulfill your promise, said Rong Lu to Luan Fengchen. Naturally, I'll do my best to help you, said Luan Fengchen. Ning Qin then left. His mission here had already been completed. Just in case, he had to return ahead of time. Senior Golden Staff, let's go. Ning Qin rushed over 50 miles from the Holy Land. He glanced at the elder who was waiting for him. The Golden Staff Imperial Tutor sighed emotionally. After leaving for so long, he was finally going to return. Half a day later, the 2 of them stepped into the chaotic streams of light at the peak of the 9 heavens and disappeared. Within Desolate City, Mu Bai, who had been quietly standing in front of the sword pool, left behind his sword. He didn't take it with him. Within the Grand Xia's Empyrean Academy, early in the morning, a white-robed figure walked over. He was the most unexpected guest. His sword intent was completely concealed, making him seem like the most ordinary person. Mu Bai had only one goal in coming here, to pay a visit to the world's strongest person, or perhaps the world's strongest sword. Not long ago, the primal chaos sword essence had been unsheathed. It had cut open the boundaries of space, allowing him to see a higher level of sword. It didn't seem like a sword of the mortal world. To be more precise, it was a sword that surpassed the limits of the human martial path. Mu Bai and his teacher met in a simple wooden hut. 1,000 years ago, the strongest swords met. They didn't fight, just the most ordinary Dao seeking and Dao discussion. Mu Qingxue calmly poured tea for them and left. He hadn't said a single word from start to finish. Many thanks for teaching Qingxue, said Mu Qingxue. He had been obsessed with the sword his entire life, and he didn't care much about this niece his brother had entrusted to him. Now that his teacher was personally teaching her, he was relieved. I was just entrusted by someone else, said his teacher calmly. Mu Bai knew who his teacher was referring to and nodded. The matters of the younger generation could only be resolved by themselves. No one could replace them on their own path. After he finished speaking, Mu Bai's expression became serious. He said, I have a question. I've been thinking about it for a long time, but I still can't find an answer. I hope teacher can answer it. Please ask, replied his teacher. Teacher's sword that day seemed to contain something else. The limit of a human's martial path has already been proven to be the great circle of the 3 calamities. But teacher's sword clearly surpassed that limit in that instant, said Mu Bai. Why do you train in the sword? Asked his teacher instead of answering. Mu Bai thought for a moment and then shook his head. There's no reason. This is already the most important part of my life. What I'm asking is, why did you first hold a sword? Asked his teacher again. Mu Bai frowned and calmed down. He carefully thought about it. It had been so long that he had almost forgotten when he had held a sword for the first time. After an unknown amount of time, Mu Bai put down his teacup and said with a trace of uncertainty, at that time, the situation between Desolate City and the Grand Xia was tense. My father didn't have much time left, and my brother's body wasn't suitable for martial arts. I held a sword so that Desolate City wouldn't be swallowed by the Grand Xia. His teacher nodded. Your sword has already reached the peak. There's no one who can guide you anymore. If there's anything lacking in your sword, perhaps it's that you lack the heart you had at the beginning. As for whether that's true or not, I can't be sure. You'll have to find out for yourself. Mu Bai was silent for a long time before he stood up and bowed. I've learned a lot. Many thanks. Mu Bai turned and left without the slightest hesitation. After Mu Bai left, Mu Qingxue entered the room. He tidied up the tea on the table and said, Teacher, the horse has been fed. The ape is very anxious because it's about to undergo its tribulation. The horse was brought back by Ning Chen. The ape was also brought back by Ning Chen. They were raised in the academy. In the past, the teachers of the academy took care of them. Now, Mu Qingxue was in charge of taking care of them. Mu Qingxue didn't ask too much about what the teacher told him to do. He just did it seriously. Okay. The teacher replied softly, when it's about to undergo its tribulation, just let it go. Mu Qingxue agreed and quietly left the wooden house. He didn't want to disturb the teacher anymore. The first girl of the younger generation to enter the Khanate realm and the fastest person in the world slowed down after entering the academy. She hid her sharpness and calmed down her heart. At that moment, the heavens and earth rumbled and trembled. In the academy, where the spatial boundary had been cut open, cracks appeared one after another. Boundless power kept colliding. There was actually an external force trying to open the passage between the two realms again. In the Ascension Valley, Ning Chen, who had just stepped out of the space turbulence and returned to the divine land, also felt the trembling of the heaven and earth. A trace of coldness flashed in his eyes. If anyone else wanted to come, then come. At this moment, no matter how many people came, he wouldn't mind. 15 minutes later, the sound of collision stopped. The cracked space returned to normal. In front of a complete space barrier, even a great fulfillment 3 disasters couldn't break it. They had to give up temporarily. Chapter 364. In the homeland of West Buddha, above the many cultivators, a divine palace stood in the clouds. It was sacred and extraordinary, symbolizing the majesty of the strongest cultivator in the world. The great perfection of the 3 disasters, the existence of the ancient sages, the pinnacle of human martial arts, the absolute invincible supreme cultivator in the world. Below the divine palace, even the 3 disasters had to bow their heads and act carefully, not daring to disturb the heavens. Above the divine palace, a man in purple stood in the sky, looking at the spatial rift that was gradually closing in front of him, frowning slightly. Not long ago, he clearly felt the breath from the divine prefecture of the eastern region. Within 1,000 miles of the divine palace, countless cultivators trembled, looking at the man in purple, their eyes full of awe. The strongest cultivator in the world attacked the spatial barrier. Such terrible fluctuations had already made half of the homeland of West Buddha tremble. Purple Heavenly Palace, what are you doing? On the other side of the homeland of Western Buddha, in an ancient temple, a demonic aura filled the air. A cultivator of the same level spoke coldly. Demon Buddha, are you interested in opening this spatial barrier and pulling back the lost region? Purple Heavenly Palace responded above the divine palace. Not interested. In the temple, the existence known as the Demon Buddha refused directly. How long have you been stuck at the great perfection of the 3 disasters? Have you ever wondered why you have been unable to break through? Purple Heavenly Palace asked calmly. Heaven and earth are incomplete, the demon Buddha said coldly. Since you have guessed it, why not try? You must not have much time left. Now that the location of the divine prefecture of the eastern region has appeared, as long as you pull it back and restore this world, it is not impossible to enter the next realm, Purple Heavenly Palace said lightly. The demon Buddha was unmoved. He snorted coldly and said, "Don't tell me you don't know what is there. I am not tired of living to the point of throwing my life away." Lord Pluto. A few days ago, the breath of the eastern region appeared briefly. You must have felt it. Without a doubt, there was no breath of Lord Pluto, Purple Heavenly Palace said. The demon Buddha was silent and did not speak. For 30,000 years, there has been no movement from Lord Pluto. Presumably, the accident that occurred when he arrived has completely separated the 7 extinction heavens from the divine prefecture of the eastern region. Otherwise, do you think this mere spatial barrier can stop him? Purple Heavenly Palace continued. The demonic Buddha's heart wavered slightly, and he said, "Even so, with just you and me, it's impossible to pull them back to the eastern divine prefecture." Zi Tiangong's eyes flashed and he said in a low voice, "What if you and I take half a step forward? As long as you and I work together to open this spatial barrier, build the Four Corners Divine Tower, and send the Divine Continent's origin energy back to us. We'll use this opportunity to take half a step forward. At that time, we'll use the Four Corners Divine Tower's power to pull the Eastern region's Divine Continent back. Within 100 years, we'll definitely be able to see the realm beyond heaven." The demon Buddha was silent again. He did not have much time left. If he could not step out of the limits of the world, he would die in less than 100 years. Although the words of the Purple Heavenly Palace were crazy, there was indeed a certain possibility. It wasn't easy to build the 4 cardinal divine towers. The Eastern Region Divine Prefecture can't just sit by and do nothing. Moreover, the stronger the person's cultivation, the stronger the spatial restriction. With our abilities, it's already difficult for us to work together to open the spatial boundary. If we want to send a true expert over, it'll be very difficult. The demonic Buddha raised a question. Zi Tiangong thought for a moment and said, "Send Luo Xingqian over. Although his cultivation is not at the top, his strength is unquestionable." That traitor of the Zhao clan. The demonic Buddha frowned slightly. He also knew this person. Although he was extremely talented, he was arrogant and unruly. When he was still in the Zhao clan, his relationship with the Zhao clan's big shots was extremely strained. In the end, when he betrayed the Zhao clan, he was hunted down by the Zhao clan's big shots and countless experts. They fought all the way from the central region to the homeland of Western Buddha. In the end, the Purple Heavenly Palace appeared and saved Luo Xingqian's life. It was also because of this that Luo Xingqian owed the Purple Heavenly Palace a favor. Luo Xingqian's surname was not originally Luo. It was only after he betrayed the Zhao clan that he changed his name to Luo Xingqian. Because he had only cultivated for a short period of time, he had only just passed the second disaster. However, this person had one of the Zhao clan's 3 heavenly bows, the Star Scar Bow. His combat ability was no weaker than the Zhao clan's big shots from the third disaster. Don't worry. Although this person is arrogant, he is someone who keeps his promises. When I saved him back then, I valued this point. With him in charge, the construction of the 4 cardinal divine tower will be completed very quickly, Zi Tiangong said. After saying this, Zi Tiangong paused for a moment and suggested, for the sake of fairness, among the 4 people to build the 4 cardinal divine tower, you will choose 3, and I will choose 1. What do you think? Okay. The demonic Buddha thought for a moment and agreed. He asked, when do we start? 1 month later, Zi Tiangong said seriously. Okay, the demonic Buddha replied. At the end of the negotiations, the divine palace and the temple regained their tranquility. In the homeland of West Buddha, no one knew what had happened in less than a quarter of an hour. Although the decisions between the strongest would inevitably affect the people of the world had never had the right to intervene. In the Divine Prefecture, Ascension Valley, Ningchen returned from the Four Extremities realm. Because the Golden Staff Imperial Advisor was injured, he returned to the northern Meng Heavenly Lake to recuperate. The two of them temporarily parted ways and returned to their respective places. In the Jiming Marquis manor, after Ningchen returned, he first asked Meng Xuanji about what had happened recently. When he learned that Ziyi's soul had been rescued, he heaved a sigh of relief. Although the one-person double transformation technique was exquisite, it had many shortcomings. The two bodies could not communicate with each other. Before the doppelganger returned to the original body, it was not much different from two people. Has the Eternal Night Hierophant not come out yet? Ningchen asked. No. Meng Xuanji shook her head. Ningchen frowned slightly. It seemed that the Eternal Night Hierophant had suffered heavy injuries in the battle with the Nether King. If that was the case, they would not have enough manpower. In the Four Extremities realm, Li Luo and Jian Bodhi were working together to hunt him down. In addition, Rong Lu was also eyeing Feng Yuan covetously. Bai Jiang could not stay there for long. As long as there was a chance, he would rush back as soon as possible. The best way was to concentrate their forces in Ascension Valley. I'm going out. Time was of the essence. Ningchen did not delay any longer and immediately rushed towards the northwest of the Grand Xia. In Azure Frost Valley, in the snow, Hong Yi appeared. She released her aura and waited for someone to come. Not long after, a young man in a black and white cloak walked over. Seeing the person in front of him, he frowned and said, "You need help again?" "Brother Mu, I'll have to trouble you," Ningchen said. "How many favors do you owe me?" Mu Qianshang said calmly. "Ha!" Ningchen smiled helplessly and said, "We're friends, don't treat me like an outsider." "What do you want to do this time?" Mu Qianshang did not talk much about this topic and asked. "Kill Bai Jiang," Ningchen said seriously. Mu Qianshang's eyes flashed. The current leader of the Eternal Night cult. The price to pay for calling him a friend was not small. Who's going to fight? Mu Qianshang did not beat around the bush and went straight to the point. For an expert of this level, even if several people joined forces, there must be at least one person who could block his attack. Simply put, there must be someone who could withstand his attacks. Ha! Ningchen smiled again and said, "Brother Mu's foundation is deep, can you bear this heavy burden?" "Your joke is not funny at all," Mu Qianshang said indifferently. He was only at the fourth tribulation of the Xiantian realm. No matter how confident he was, it was impossible for him to face a peak second tribulation expert head-on. Ning Chen's expression turned serious and said, "I'm not joking. This time, Brother Mu may really have to take the lead." Mu Qianshang frowned and said, "Why?" "In terms of foundation, you should be the first choice." Ning Chen did not explain further. His figure flashed and instantly appeared in front of the former. He flipped his palm and condensed Yuan Qi before striking out. Mu Qianshang's pupils shrank and he subconsciously flipped his palm to meet the attack. With a bang, his palm blocked the attack on his chest. Mu Qianshang's frown deepened. Such fast speed, such weak strength. What's going on? Mu Qianshang retracted his hand and asked. It's a long story. Ning Chen gave a simple explanation and then said seriously, Bian Jiang was stabbed by me in the Four Extreme realm and is now seriously injured. With Jian Bodhi, Li Luo, and the others joining forces to pursue him, even if he can escape, he will not have much battle strength left. Mu Qianshang thought for a moment and did not say whether he agreed or not. He said indifferently, even so, if it's just the two of us, the chances of success are still very slim. With your character, you will definitely not only look for me alone. Who else is there? Mu Qingxue. Ning Chen replied. Mu Qianshang's lips curled slightly as he sneered, so it's her. Then you should think of a way to persuade her. If she takes action, I will go. If she does not agree, then Marquis can go on his own. I will not accompany you. I wish you good luck, we will meet again. With that, Mu Qianshang did not stay any longer and turned to leave. After 3 steps, an ink light flashed and he disappeared. Seeing the former leave, Ning Chen sighed softly. If Mu Qingxue was so easy to invite, he would not have come here first. A moment later, in Azure Frost Valley, the red clothes scattered and turned into a stream of light, rushing towards the academy. Heavenly Firmament Academy, after the aftermath of the spatial tremor, had regained its former peace. As for the cause of the spatial tremor, the teacher was not too concerned and did not have the energy to care about it. 1,000 years of waiting had already caused this old man to be on the verge of death. Mu Qingxue was as usual, quiet and quiet. Most of the time, he was thinking hard about something. Ever since he entered the academy, the coldness on his appearance had lessened greatly and was replaced by a calmness like water. Ning Chen walked over with the mahogany box containing Dayan's azure sparrow sword. After greeting the teacher, he came to the west corner of the academy where Mu Qingxue was feeding the horse. The little white horse recognized the master who had abandoned it for many years. It was not angry and moved its big face towards Ning Chen, trying to curry favor with him. However, Ning Chen pushed it far away in disdain. After so many years, this guy's bad habit had not changed. Miss Mu, according to our agreement, I've come to return the sword. Ning Chen took the mahogany box from his back and handed it over. Young Master Ning, you've been borrowing things for quite a long time. Mu Qingxue put down the wooden ladle filled with water and stretched out her hand to tidy up her long hair that was fluttering in the wind. She looked at Dayan's azure sparrow sword and calmly said. If she remembered correctly, Ning Chen had borrowed this sword 2 years ago to deal with a martial lord. He had said that he would return it after he finished using it. Who would have thought that he would wait for 2 years? Chapter 365. Ning Chen looked at the girl in front of him who was less cold and more peaceful. His heart calmed down as well. It was fine as long as she was doing well. The sword returned to its owner. The green sparrow in the box chirped softly, as if it was saying goodbye to its master who had accompanied it for 2 years. The knowing destiny state cultivator who didn't understand the sword also heard the green sparrow's farewell. Warmth flashed through his eyes. Senior was right. The sword had a spirit. He just needed to listen carefully. Mu Qingxue took the red wooden sword box and stroked the sword. The green sparrow stopped chirping and calmed down. The green sparrow withdrew its edge. The beautiful sword patterns on the sword showed thousands of years of wind and frost. The sword of the royal family would eventually return to the Zine royal family. This was the only symbol of the Zine Empire's existence. What's the matter? Mu Qingxue asked. Although she hadn't left the academy, she knew that the divine prefecture was facing a great calamity. The person in front of her had too many concerns. He couldn't stay out of it. Get the phoenix source, Ning Chen said seriously. What do you need me to do? Mu Qingxue put the red wooden sword box aside and continued with his work. Ning Chen went up to help carry the fodder for the little white horse and piled it together. He explained the current situation and future arrangements in detail. Are you confident? Mu Qingxue asked as he scooped a wooden ladle of water into the water tank in the shed. As long as there are no accidents, there will be no problem. The 7 absolute heavens must have great restrictions when using Bai Zhang's body to descend. What happened at Feng's Perch Mountain won't happen again. Otherwise, with the power that the Lord of Hell showed, it's almost impossible for us to escape, Ning Chen replied. The Lord of Hell's power was indeed unrivaled. Whether it was in the central spiritual region or Feng's Perch Mountain, he only showed the tip of the iceberg and made them suffer. Such an existence shouldn't appear in the human world. Wait a moment. I'll go say goodbye to the teacher, Mu Qingxue said softly after finishing his work. Mu Qingxue picked up the green sparrow sword box and walked towards the wooden house in the east. Ning Chen looked at the girl who left and waited quietly. The quiet and peaceful Mu Qingxue they first met was back. As for whether he could recover his memory or not, perhaps it wasn't important anymore. Let's go. Mu Qingxue said after a while. Yes. Ning Chen nodded. The two of them left. Their snow-white robes fluttered in the wind, not a single speck of dust could be seen on them. Beside them, their red robes fluttered in the wind, as bright as blood. They never had the chance to stop and rest during their journey. In this chaotic world, the world was filled with misery and sorrow. Who could transcend this world? In Azure Frost Valley, the two of them arrived. Mu Qianshang appeared as promised. When he saw the white-clothed girl behind Ning Chen, he gave an incomprehensible smile. Love in this world was just like knowing destiny. He had won the world, but he could never win her. Let's go. You owe me another favor, said Mu Qianshang. Ha, if there's a chance, I'll return it. Ning Chen lightly laughed. Mu Qianshang did not say anything else. Ever since they had known each other, he had personally witnessed the caltrip flower growing on the blood-red ice lake back then. He knew that there was a kind of person who did not care for words. Are they friends? Perhaps, but the word friend was as light as a feather when spoken, but as heavy as Mount Tai when done. What a loss, what a loss. The black-clothed swordsman laughed at himself. Was it a loss? Perhaps. However, Mu Qianshang was very clear that even if he was given another chance, he would still make the same choice. At the manor of the Marquis of Jiming, all the people who should be invited had been invited. The two of them waited for a whole day. During the day, Ning Chen rushed to several cities to prepare something. It was not until sunset that he returned, covered in dust. The three of them did not stay for long. Taking advantage of the moonlight, they quickly rushed in the direction of Ascension Valley. They did not know when the enemy would arrive, so they could only wait patiently. Ning Chen carefully mixed the sulfur, saltpeter, and other medicinal stones he had brought and buried them under Ascension Valley, preparing a gift for the return of Bian River. Will this thing be useful against the experts of the three disasters? Mu Qianshang looked at the small mountain of medicinal stones in front of the valley and frowned. He had heard that Emperor Xia had racked his brains to obtain this thing. However, the experts of the three disasters were not ordinary. These external things would not be of much use. In my hometown, people without martial arts can also use external objects to destroy a city. My knowledge is limited, so I can't do that. However, no matter if it's useful or not, the more preparations I make, the more likely I will succeed. Ning Chen said calmly as he seriously did what he was doing. Mu Qingxue stepped forward and did as the former had said, helping to bury the gunpowder. Seeing this, Mu Qianshang sighed in his heart and also stepped forward to help. He was right. No matter what, it was better to be prepared than to do nothing. 2 days and 1 night, the three of them carefully buried the gunpowder in the entire Ascension Valley. The small mountain of medicinal stones in front of the valley also disappeared. After a long wait, the three of them took turns to adjust their breathing, maintaining their bodies in the best condition. This battle was not simple. No matter how serious Bian Zhang's injuries were, he was still one of the three disasters. This was something that no one could change. Time passed day by day. In the blink of an eye, it was close to a month. Just as the bright moon in the sky was full again, there was finally movement in Ascension Valley. The spatial passage was moving. No one knew who it was, but a powerful pressure had already appeared. He's here. A cold light flashed in Ning Chen's eyes. He really came back alive. Behind him, Mu Qingxue and Mu Qianshang opened their eyes at the same time. They stood up and looked at the spatial passage in Ascension Valley with a serious expression. The broken death bow was bent and a bloody light gathered, forming a scarlet arrow. The cry of a phoenix could be faintly heard and flames curled around it, locking onto the exit. A moment later, a black figure walked out. At this moment, the scarlet arrow appeared and flew towards the former's heart. In the blink of an eye, the arrow was already in front of him. Bian Zhang's expression sank and he flipped his palm to block the arrow. With a bang, he shattered the arrow. The red arrow radiance scattered in all directions and sank into the ground with flames. In the next moment, a terrifying scene appeared. A huge explosion rang out, one after another. Amidst the loud rumbling, flames soared into the sky and instantly engulfed the entire Ascension Valley. Mu Qianshang's eyes flashed with shock. Only after personally witnessing this did he understand why the Xia Emperor had been so crazy about obtaining the formula for the gunpowder. Seriously, the real battle is coming. Ning Chen clenched his right hand and the Yama King's divine sword appeared in his hand. It was impossible for Bian Jiang to die so easily. Otherwise, a 3 disasters expert wouldn't be so terrifying. Your crimes are unforgivable. As expected, within the sea of flames, the black aura reappeared. Bian Jiang, who had used his full strength to block the explosion, was in an extremely sorry state. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. Looking at the 3 people in front of him, killing intent appeared in his eyes. With a wave of his palm, a ferocious might shook the world. Surging Yama King energy crazily rushed towards the 3 of them. Brother Mu, be careful. Ning Chen warned. His figure flickered and he dodged the palm. His body turned and his sword shot towards Bian Jiang with extreme speed. At the same time, Mu Qingxue circulated the travel scroll. White light flashed and the shadow-bearing sword shot out. His sword moved and he followed. Mu Qianshang's speed wasn't as fast as the 2 of them, so it was difficult for him to dodge. With a wave of his hand, the snow sword appeared. An ink painting of mountains and rivers appeared, forming a sword domain of its own. The black mountain and white water shattered, and the palm's power weakened. Behind the mountains and rivers, Mu Qianshang's sword condensed ink to meet the remaining shockwaves. With a bang, the swordsman was forced back 3 steps. His mouth was dyed red. He had been injured in one move, but he had still managed to block Bian Zhang's palm. The mountain and river's sword domain spread out, surrounding the 4 of them. The snow sword was used as a brush to paint a painting of heaven and earth. His extraordinary cultivation in the sword did not lose out to anyone present. The 3 swords trapped Bian Jiang. One sword was fast, and the other was even faster. The red robes flashed, and the white robes appeared. Each of their moves was aimed at Bian Zhang's vitals. The 2 fastest people in the world, one grasped the travel scroll, the other grasped the phoenix's origin. Their combination was fast to the peak, making it hard for others to resist. Bian Zhang's palm's power was astonishing. The 2 of them could not avoid it in time. Mu Qianshang immediately stood up to block, resisting Bian Zhang's divine power. The orderly combination of offense and defense ensured the fiercest offense. Using offense as defense, they suppressed Bian Zhang's power to the greatest extent. Under the powerful attack, Bian Jiang was in a difficult situation. When he attacked, his qi was not condensed enough, and his advantage in cultivation was gradually reduced to nothing. Mu Qingxue was not good at foundation, and Ning Chen was unable to withstand Bian Zhang's palm. Thus, in this battle, Mu Qianshang's task was very crucial. Once there was a mistake in their coordination, the suppressive situation would instantly be reversed. Forcefully blocking Bian Zhang's attack, Mu Qianshang's right hand was injured. It was dripping with blood. On the painting of mountains and rivers, the bloody light was beautiful and bewitching. Ah! With a groan, the king of hell's divine sword pierced through his chest. Bian Jiang held the sword with his right hand, and with a flip of his left palm, he slapped towards the person in front of him. The snow sword followed, and with a loud bang, it blocked the palm. Blood splattered, and the ink-robed figure retreated a few steps. Just at this moment, the Chengying sword arrived. The sword pierced through Bian Jiang's qi, forcefully destroying Bian Jiang's cultivation. Ah! Amidst the intense pain, a violent black qi dispersed. Ning Chen took the opportunity to withdraw his sword, avoiding the backlash around Bian Jiang. Mu Qingxue also retreated. The moment the Chengying sword was pulled out, blood spurted out like a fountain. Mu Qianshang was about to step forward, but was stopped by Ning Chen. "Wait a minute," Ning Chen said solemnly. He had forced Bian Jiang to the brink of death more than once. However, every time, there would be unexpected situations. The king of hell had poured too much power into this person. He did not want any accidents to happen at the last moment. Retrieving the phoenix origin is more important. Saying that, Ning Chen's true essence rose. In the dazzling bloodlight, the phoenix origin responded to each other. It flew out from Bian Jiang's body and landed in Jiming's hands. Retrieving the phoenix origin, the mission was finally completed. The life or death of the person in front of him was meaningless. His qi was destroyed, even if he did not die, he would be crippled. A violent black qi dispersed from Bian Jiang's body. The invincible Bian Jiang had finally reached his end. Ning Chen would never say nonsense about sparing his opponent's life. Breaking death bow, the blood light dazzled. A scarlet arrow pierced through the sky. After this arrow, Bian Jiang's legend would be completely ended. Bian Jiang, Chu Li rushed over. Seeing this scene, his expression changed greatly. However, it was too late for him to stop it. Just at this moment, a terrifying collision sound suddenly rang out. The space of the entire divine great land trembled violently. Chapter 366. The sudden change caused space to violently shake. The scarlet arrow was deflected, brushing past by Zhang's left shoulder and causing blood to spurt out. Chu Li finally managed to catch up. The azure spear swept towards the three of them, carrying the heavily injured and dying Bai Jiang as they quickly left. Hong Yi and Bai Yi dodged the spear and immediately chased after them. Mu Qianshang blocked the attack with his sword and also quickly chased after them. Boom! At this time, another earth-shattering collision rang out. The world shook and the terrifying tremors caused all the commoners in the divine prefecture to be alarmed. The constantly shaking space caused great trouble for the three of them. Chu Li did his best to stabilize himself and constantly changed directions. Soon, he had disappeared without a trace. What's going on? Mu Qingxue stopped and looked at the constantly twisting space. Someone is attacking the barrier. Someone from the alien realm might be coming. Ning Chen looked in the direction of the academy, a cold light flashing in his eyes. This Bai Zhang's life was really tough. Fortunately, the phoenix source had been recovered and the main goal of this trip had been accomplished. The Eternal Night Gods sect had a way to repair their Dantian's qi, but it would take a long time. Even if Bai Jiang was not dead, he would not be a threat for a while. Before that, they needed to find a way to completely stop the Nether King's descent. Let's return to the academy first, said Ning Chen. The source of the spatial tremors came from the academy. It was even more violent than the last time. They did not know the strength of the alien realm's invaders. Whether they were friend or foe, they had to go and take a look. Then let's part here. I also need to return to the Compassionate Sword Heavenly Pavilion to heal, said Mu Qianshang calmly. This time, many thanks to Brother Mu, said Ning Chen seriously. Ah, I've heard too many words of thanks. There's no need to say any more. Let's meet again, replied Mu Qianxiang indifferently. He immediately changed directions and rushed towards the northwest. Let's go as well. Mu Qingxue said softly. He turned into a white light and rushed towards the academy. Ning Qin nodded. Hong Yi scattered and quickly followed. In front of the wooden hut in the Empyrean Academy, the teacher walked out. Looking at the shaking space in front of him, there was no light in his turbid eyes. Unlike Ascension Valley, it was not easy to break through a complete spatial barrier. It seemed that at least 2 people at the peak of the 3 disasters from the other 4 regions had joined forces. In the distance, 2 streaks of light, one red and one white, were flying over at extreme speed. They were so fast that it was shocking. They disappeared in a flash, and not even their afterimages could be seen. The space trembled more and more violently, especially in the academy. Cracks appeared in the air, visible to the naked eye, and became clearer and clearer. In the next moment, with a bang, spatial fragments scattered in all directions. Violent air currents reverberated between the 2 realms. 4 figures walked out first, 3 men and 1 woman. They wore strange and simple clothes, and their powerful auras were faintly discernible. They were all powerhouses of the 3 disasters stage. After the 4 of them, a young man in purple and white clothes walked out. He had a handsome face, sword-like eyebrows, and starry eyes. The corners of his mouth were slightly raised, and it was obvious that he was arrogant. The person who had come was the supreme expert of the younger generation who had betrayed the Zhao clan, Luo Xingqian. Eastern Region Divine Prefecture, Ha! Luo Xingqian's eyes swept across the land in front of him and smiled faintly. Was this the Eastern Divine Prefecture that had been thrown out of the 5 regions back then? He hoped that it would not disappoint him too much. The first rays of the morning sun shone in the east. The arrival of the otherworldly experts would bring about changes to the Divine Prefecture. Under the first rays of the morning sun, the 2 people who had rushed over finally arrived. Seeing the 5 people who had walked out, they stopped. Trouble, Mu Qingxue said softly. Before the first wave was over, another wave arose. 5 powerhouses of the 3 disasters stage had appeared at once. In the future, there would be new waves in the Divine Prefecture. Let them come. It's already chaotic enough. 5 more won't make a difference, Ning Ning said coldly. At this point, it did not matter anymore. As long as they were still humans, there would always be a way to deal with them. The real calamity was still that Pluto. Gods were indeed absurd and cruel. The spatial cracks gradually closed. After a while, everything returned to normal. The shaking heaven and earth also calmed down. The headmaster turned around and returned to the wooden house, ignoring them. Luo Xingqian suddenly frowned. He looked at the 2 people in the east, and his expression turned cold. The bow of the Zhao clan. A purple and white light flashed. In the blink of an eye, a hand reached out and grabbed the red-robed man in front of him. However, after the red light flashed, a distance of 10 feet was opened up at an even faster speed. Guests of the alien realm, this is the first time we meet. Don't you think it's a bit impolite to attack without greeting us? Ning Qin said calmly. There's no need to talk about manners when facing the people of the Zhao clan, Luo Xingqian said coldly. Ning Qin waved his hand and the broken death bow flew into his hand. He said, You mean this bow? I think you've misunderstood. I don't know about the Zhao clan. There has never been one in the Divine Prefecture. Where did you get your bow? Luo Xingqian asked coldly. A friend left it behind, Ning Qin said calmly. Where is your friend? Luo Xingqian narrowed his eyes and asked. I sent him to hell, Ning Qin said indifferently. Before he finished speaking, the only woman among the 4 people not far away also moved. Without any warning, she appeared in front of Mu Qingxue and reached out to grab him. Mu Qingxue retreated. His white robe flashed, and he avoided the woman's sudden attack. Yao Man frowned. So fast. Luo Xingqian also saw this and a strange look flashed through his eyes. He turned around and looked at the red-robed man in front of him. He said, "Are all the Xiantian experts in the Divine Prefecture this fast?" One person could be considered an accident, but both of them were so fast. It was a bit puzzling. We're considered slow. There's a city in the east. The people there aren't Xiantian experts, but they're still faster than us, Ning Qin said seriously. What a magical place. Luo Xingqian's eyes lit up. It seemed that this place wouldn't disappoint him. Luo Xingqian, we still have a mission. Don't waste any more time, Yao Man looked at this unusual couple and reminded them. You don't have the right to tell me what to do, Luo Xingqian said coldly. Yao Man snorted coldly in her heart. Anger surged, but she forced it down and didn't say anything else. Guests, you've come from afar and shouldn't be familiar with the environment of the Divine Prefecture. Why don't you stay in my residence? Ning Qin said. Although he was talking to the five of them, his gaze was always on the man in purple and white. He could see that this person was the leader of this group. I admire your courage. Luo Xingqian smiled indifferently and continued, since you've invited me, it would be impolite for me to refuse. Lead the way. Mu Qingxue couldn't guess what the person beside him was thinking, but he didn't say anything. In this world, the only person who had schemed against him had already passed away. Since he took the initiative to take the five of them away, he must have some plans. They walked a few steps, but Luo Xingqian stopped again. He looked at the woman in white behind him and said, Miss, don't you want to come with us? I'm not familiar with him. No need, Mu Qingxue said indifferently. Ha, interesting. Luo Xingqian smiled lightly and left without saying anything else. In the Jiming Marquis residence, Meng Xuanji saw that Ning Chen had returned. Just as she was about to go up and ask him, her body suddenly trembled and her eyes filled with disbelief. 5 of the 3 disasters. Brother Ning, it seems that you're also someone who cares about women. Luo Xingqian smiled when he saw Meng Xuanji. That white-robed woman from before was already a rare beauty. He hadn't expected another one to appear here. Brother Luo is teasing me. We're just friends, replied Ning Chen. The 5 of them entered the hall. Yao Man didn't dare to be careless in this unfamiliar place. She spread out her spiritual sense to investigate the entire Marquis estate. Her expression changed. There was actually an expert on the level of the 3 disasters here. Why don't you ask that friend of yours to come out? Luo Xingqian could naturally sense the pressure coming from within the Marquis estate. Brother Luo, please forgive me. That senior was injured a few days ago and is currently recuperating. It's not convenient for him to come out, replied Ning Chen. Oh. Even such an expert was injured? Luo Xingqian was surprised. I'm ashamed to say this, but I also participated in that battle. I lost miserably. I was already lucky to be able to escape with my life, sighed Ning Chen. The peak of the 3 disasters. Luo Xingqian's eyes flashed. It's not easy to judge. Forget it, let's not talk about such disappointing matters. Brother Luo, did you and your 4 friends come from the homeland of West Buddha? Ning Chen changed the topic. How do you know the homeland of West Buddha? Yao Man frowned and interjected. A few days ago, an expert called Rong Lu crossed the border and came here. I was lucky enough to learn of it. Ning Chen responded to the former's question. For the time being, he didn't mention the Bodhi sword. After he finished speaking, he quietly observed their reactions. Yao Man and the white-robed man beside her clearly had a trace of disgust on their faces. As for the other 2 youths, they revealed a trace of interest in their eyes. As for Luo Xingqian, he still didn't have any reaction. He clearly didn't care. In just a short moment, their positions were clear. Ning Chen saw this and remembered it in his heart. Marquis. Ruoshi walked over and respectfully bowed. Serve tea to the guests, said Ning Chen. Yes. Ruoshi softly replied. She immediately stepped forward and served tea to everyone present. Seeing the appearance of another beautiful woman, Yao Man's impression of the purple-robed young man in front of her became even worse. She snorted coldly in her heart. Sure enough, men are all the same. After a cup of tea's worth of conversation, the people present weren't ordinary people. It was impossible for them to really reveal anything. After a cup of tea's worth of conversation, Ning Chen called the old housekeeper to lead the 5 people to the east wing for a temporary rest. These people, we don't know if they are enemies or friends, yet you dare to bring them to the Marquis mansion. Should I say you have courage or something wrong with your head? After the 5 people left, Meng Xuanji, who hadn't spoken until now, finally couldn't help but speak up. Oh, Ning Chen chuckled and glanced at Ruoshi. Ruoshi, change a cup of tea. And Ruoshi changed the tea and served a new one. She immediately stood quietly to the side. Don't worry, no matter what their purpose is, they must first weigh the strength of the various forces in the divine land. Before that, they won't act easily. It just so happens that the sect leader is here. Such a good resource can't be wasted. Ning Chen took a sip of tea and said in a cold tone, of course, it's best if they are friends. If they are enemies, then today's tea will be their farewell. Chapter 367. In the east wing of the Marquis mansion, 4 people gathered. Han Yi from the Divine Palace, Yao Man from the Demonic Temple, Jia Feng, and Jia Yan from the Demonic Temple, the 4 of the 3 disasters were discussing the construction of the 4 cardinal towers. The 4 of them had a tacit understanding and did not inform Luo Xingqian. Everyone knew that this person was a traitor of the Zhao clan. His character was unpredictable, and he was not an easy person to work with. The Purple Heavenly Palace and the Demonic Buddha had already explained that there was no need to discuss with Luo Xingqian about the construction of the Divine Pagoda. The 4 of them could decide on their own. This Marquis Jiming is not simple. We have to be careful, Yao Man said seriously. Yi Shuihan smiled faintly and said calmly, compared to the Jiming Marquis, I'm more curious about why the expert of the 3rd disaster was injured. This person's words can't be completely trusted. Yao Man's eyes flashed with disgust. Oh, I'm more interested in this Marquis Jiming. Jia Feng, who had been silent all this time, said with a chuckle. I agree, Calamity Flame interrupted. Let's not talk about this person for now. We can't delay the construction of the 4 directions divine towers. According to the agreement, Divine Palace will be responsible for the Northern Frost Tower, while the 3 of us will be responsible for the Wind, Fire, and Lightning Towers. Right now, the most important thing is to choose a place to build it, said Yao Man seriously. There's no rush. We're still not familiar with the situation in the Eastern Divine Prefecture. We can't act rashly. Let's wait for a while, said Yi Shuihan. Brother Yi is right. The waters of the Divine Prefecture are much deeper than we thought. This mission won't be easy, agreed Jia Feng. Don't you think you're worrying too much? Along the way, aside from the 3rd calamity expert, the other people's cultivation bases aren't even worth mentioning. Back then, the Eastern region's Divine Prefecture was forced out of the 5 regions, and the world is even more damaged. Let alone the 3 calamities, even Xiantian experts are hard to come by, said Yao Man with a frown. Calamity Fire shook his head and said, not necessarily. The truth may not be as simple as it seems. Rong Lu is also here. Given the character of the king of the Rong tribe, how could he behave himself? When Jiming Marquis mentioned Rong Lu, his expression did not change. Obviously, the king of the Rong tribe has restrained himself a lot after coming to the divine land. In other words, he hasn't done anything outrageous. Hearing the name Rong Lu again, Yao Man could not hide the disgust on her face. She did not suspect that the Marquis of Jiming was lying. Rong Lu had disappeared from the homeland of West Buddha for 100 years. She did not expect him to come here. This person might become a problem. Displeasure also flashed in Yi Shuihan's eyes. The relationship between the divine palace and the king of the Rong tribe was quite ordinary. There had been a lot of friction between them 100 years ago. Now that they met again in the divine prefecture of the eastern region, it was really a small world. Tribulation wind and tribulation fire drank their tea quietly and did not interrupt. The demon temple and the Rong tower did not have anything to do with each other, so they did not comment. When Yao Man saw their reactions, she had no choice but to suppress her emotions and not express her opinion. Yi Shuihan snorted coldly in his heart. Although the divine palace and the demon temple were allies, they were not of the same mind. Just as the four of them were conversing, Red Spectre walked over from another guest room in the east wing and knocked on the door. "Please enter," said Luo Xingqian. Ning Chen pushed open the door and entered. When he saw the young man sitting at the table, he smiled and said, "Brother Luo, how was your rest?" "I was just about to rest when you came," Luo Xingqian said calmly. "Oh, then I'm sorry for disturbing you." Even so, Ning Chen still walked in, closed the door, and sat across the table unceremoniously. "Brother Ning, what do you want to know?" "You can ask directly," Luo Xingqian said directly. Brother Luo is indeed straightforward. I won't beat around the bush. May I ask if Brother Luo and the other four friends have anything important to do in the divine prefecture? If there is anything you need help with, I will do my best to help, Ning Chen said sincerely. Building the pagoda. Luo Xingqian did not hide and said lightly, "I don't know what the square tower is used for. My task is to ensure that the square tower is built smoothly. If you want to know the details, you can ask the four people. Of course, the premise is that they are willing to tell you." He owed the Violet Heavenly Palace a favor. This time, he came to the divine prefecture to repay the favor. He was not interested in anything else. Ning Chen narrowed his eyes slightly. The square tower was an unfamiliar name. However, the relationship between the five people, as he had guessed, was not as harmonious as it seemed. The headmaster had also said that a complete space barrier required at least 2 cultivators at the great attainment of 3 disasters to work together and pay a high price to open it. It seemed that the 5 people were likely to come from different forces. There was still hostility between fellow disciples. It was even more difficult for allies to work together. "I have answered your question. Now it's time for you to answer mine," Luo Xingqian said coldly. "Brother Luo, please speak," Ning Chen replied. "Where did you get your bow?" Luo Xingqian's expression was cold. Just now, the 4 people were there, so he did not ask much. It was incredible that the eastern region also had a bow from the Zhao family. It happened many years ago. Ning Chen recounted the process of how he got the bow from the disabled man. He could see that the person in front of him hated the Zhao family deeply. There was no harm in telling him this. "Good job." Luo Xingqian sneered after hearing the story. "Brother Luo, you seem to hate the Zhao family very much. However, why do you have a bow from the Zhao family?" Ning Chen glanced at a quaint longbow placed not far away and asked. "Brother Ning, I'm a bit tired," said Luo Xingqian indifferently. "Ah, then Brother Luo should rest first. I'll take my leave." Ning Chen smiled and walked out. "I admire you. I hope we won't be enemies," said Luo Xingqian behind him. "Of course not." Ning Chen didn't linger. He opened the door and walked out. Within the room, Luo Xingqian frowned slightly. For some reason, he felt that this person's condition was a bit strange. He didn't seem like a real person, but more like a shadow. One figure after another flew out of Ascension Valley. Seeing the ravaged valley, the two people at the front were startled. "It seems we came too late," said Rong Lu. Wanfengchen's eyes were constantly shining. Without a doubt, this was Ning Chen's doing. He just didn't know what the result would be. Bai Zhang's cultivation base is extremely high. Even if he's heavily injured, he won't be easy to deal with, said Luan Fengchen. Rong Lu nodded. That was correct. A peak expert of the second calamity truly wouldn't die so easily. A moment later, the two of them led several experts from the Holy Lands to the west. Not long after they left, two more figures appeared. It was Li Luo and Jian Bodhi. Did you succeed? Li Luo narrowed his eyes as he looked at the ravaged Ascension Valley. This was already their best chance. Hopefully, there wouldn't be any more accidents. The Nether King's tribulation wasn't child's play. The two of them didn't delay and immediately rushed to the Marquis' mansion. The sun set in the west and the day passed. Night fell and the blood-red moon appeared in the east. It was so dazzling. In the eastern courtyard of the Marquis' mansion, Yao Man, Yishui Han, and the others suddenly felt uneasy. They pushed open the door and saw the blood-red moon in the sky. Their expressions immediately changed. What was going on? Luo Xingqian also walked out of his room. Looking to the east, light pulsed in his eyes. What terrifying energy! 5 guests, the Marquis' mansion doesn't have anything to entertain you with. We've specially prepared some green fruits for you to quench your thirst. Ning Chen walked over at the right time. Behind him, Ruoshi carried 5 plates of green fruits and placed them on a stone table in the courtyard. Marquis, may I ask what's going on? Jia Feng asked. I'm not too sure. It's been like this since half a year ago. It really scared a lot of people and caused a lot of trouble for the Marquis' mansion. But we're used to it now. Ning Chen replied. Humph, let's not beat around the bush. As a Xiantian master, how can you not feel this terrifying energy? Hiding the truth won't do you any good. Yao Man's expression was cold. Her words were not without threat. Ning Chen didn't care and smiled. Miss Yao misunderstood. I really don't know. I only heard a few words from the seniors in the mansion. This matter seems to be related to some Nether King. You also know that the longer a person lives, the more they like to pretend to be unfathomable. They never speak a complete sentence. I don't believe there is a Nether King in this world. This kind of celestial phenomenon will pass in a few days. Nether King, 7 extinction heavens. Hearing the 2 words Nether King, the 5 people present, except for Luo Xingqian, all trembled. It really was him. The 4 of them came from the Divine Palace and the Demon Temple. They knew some things that ordinary inheritances didn't know. If there was anything a Peak 3 disasters needed to be afraid of, it would undoubtedly be this terrifying existence. Outside the Imperial City, Jian Bodhi and Li Luo returned. As soon as they entered the Imperial City, they sensed several faint auras from the Marquis' mansion. At the same time, the 5 people in the Marquis' mansion also sensed the auras of 2 of the 3 disasters in the distance. Their expressions changed once more. Jian Bodhi and Li Luo frowned. They didn't know what was going on, so they temporarily hid their auras and didn't rush back. Not long after, Wan Fengchen and Rong Lu's group also appeared in the Imperial City. They originally wanted to take the phoenix blood left behind by the Marquis after his death. However, after sensing the auras in the Marquis' mansion, they immediately stopped. How is this possible? Rong Lu's expression changed. When did the Marquis' mansion have so many 3 disasters? Within the Marquis' mansion, Shui Han, Yao Man, and the others also had ugly expressions. They originally thought that there weren't many 3 disasters in the Divine Continent. They hadn't expected 4 to appear in just one day. And the weakest was at the peak of the second disaster. Everyone's here. Ning Chen sneered inside. The timing was perfect. Senior Rong Lu, since you've come, why don't you come and sit with us? Hong Yi appeared in the air, looking at the figures not far away. It's you. You didn't die, said Rong Lu icily. Thanks to the heavens, I was lucky enough to survive. Brother Fengchen, that saber of yours was truly vicious. My 70% success physique was crippled just like that. Tell me, how should I repay you? Asked Ning Chen. You don't need to repay me. This time, I'll send you on your way. Wan Fengchen waved his fan, and it transformed into a rainbow saber that shone with dazzling light. Rong Lu, long time no see. How have you been? Yi Shuihan stepped into the air, looking at the blood-red robed man in front of him. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.